All right, so we are recording. I'd like to call the Tuesday, October 20th, 2020 Duval City Council meeting to order at 7:04 p.m. And would you please join me in the flag salute as soon as the flag appears? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Councilmember Brudnicki.
Here.
Councilmember Iyer.
Present.
Councilmember McHenry.
Here.
Councilmember Remington.
Here.
Councilmember Hogue.
Here.
Councilmember Napland.
Here.
Councilmember Langle.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Under consent agenda, please add payroll for October 20th, 2020 in the amount of $164,444.55. Claims for October 12th through October 20th, 2020 in the amount of $710,177.84. Under new business, please add from the Committee of the Whole agenda, budget book and non-departmental budget presentations. And under unfinished business, please remove resolution and additional human services grant funding. And with that, do we have a motion to adopt this evening's council agenda? Oh, first of all, actually, I forgot to ask if there are any council members that would like to speak tonight. McHenry and Hogue. All right. Now with that, do we have a motion to approve this evening's council agenda?
So moved, McHenry.
Second, Michelle Hogue.
Moved by Councilmember McHenry, seconded by Councilmember Hogue. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And with that, do we have a motion to approve this evening's consent agenda, which includes AB 20-81B, approve and authorize the mayor to sign interlocal agreement with City of Redmond for dispatch services for 2021 and 2022. And Agenda Bill 20-89A, approve and authorize the mayor to sign contract amendment number 15 with John Galt for hearing examiner services, extending the date of the contract to June 30th, 2021.
So moved, McHenry.
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda by Councilmember McHenry and a second by Councilmember Iyer. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. All right. With that, we will move on to comments from the audience. First of all, Clerk Wyckoff, have you received any written comments for this evening?
I have not received any written comments, and I have just allowed the 3 attendees to unmute themselves should they choose to speak.
All right, so with the attendees, go ahead and unmute yourself, and if you would like to speak, please provide your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak to whatever topic you wish. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone, so just give it another second just in case folks are having trouble with the mute button. That does happen on occasion. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to scheduled items. For mayor's report, I think we alluded to it a little bit earlier. Clerk, if you could bring up the pictures of our new officer and his family, that would be great. This morning, I had the distinct honor of swearing in our newest officer with the city of Duval, Officer Luke Hill. He was joined by his wife and just absolutely sweet, adorable children. And we're really lucky to have him here. So it was nice to actually be able to do an in-person masked ceremony today. And we're definitely glad to have him on board. Chief Hurt and his team do an excellent job of selecting our officers, and I'm sure he's going to be a fantastic fit. And he is now will be out with his training supervisor here very soon. So welcome to Mr. Hill, and we're very thankful for him coming to our wonderful community of Duval. Lots going on the last couple of weeks in addition to budget. Yesterday we interviewed a couple of candidates for planning commissioner. Last week the association Washington City's ad hoc broadband study committee met. We heard from Senator Rolfes, and actually more so she heard from us on what we're needing as far as changes in legislation. The Snoqualmie Valley governors met this morning for the SVGA caucus with Sound Cities Association. We just had a quick half-hour meeting with the mayors and talked about what's going on, and it looks like cities such as North Bend are seeing a major rebound in their retail sales tax, despite the outlet centers being pretty much closed down. So we're definitely seeing some shifts in the economy that I think a lot of cities weren't expecting. So that's definitely good news. We have the Sound Cities board meeting tomorrow, as well as the PSRC executive committee on Thursday, where we'll be recommending the transportation plan for Vision 2050. And then last week or week before last, the governor's office started holding calls with the Sound Cities mayors again regarding COVID and what's going on. And I think folks may have seen that there's some new regulations coming out for college students and housing. From the information we received on the call today, which has definitely been pretty widely reported in the media, many of the breakouts that we're seeing around the region with the numbers going up are related to college students that are not attending school in person, but living on campus or nearby, congregating and letting their guard down, as well as they're seeing a bigger spike in small family and friend gatherings that are being held indoors without people wearing masks. So there's a lot of ways I think folks can gather safely, but being indoors is definitely one of those much higher risk categories. And it's a stark reminder that this virus doesn't care who you are, where you are, and it will, if it has an opportunity, it's going to make you sick. So my concern here is rolling backwards with our businesses and making sure that we can keep folks in business. We've had a local nonprofit just announced they're going out of business. They just announced over the weekend, and that's incredibly unfortunate, but also not completely unexpected, because if you can't be in person, it's hard to keep afloat. So I'm hoping that the latest numbers will be a wake-up call for folks that have relaxed to get back on track, and for those that have not been following guidelines to start following those guidelines. Other than that, we're working on obviously the budget. We'll be hopefully meeting with Snoqualmie's IT director next week to start discussions on their ILA and not just the ILA, but other, how things are going and what have you with IT, and really getting down to normal business. Councilmember Lingle and I met to go over the last of the business grants. I have a couple more double checking things to do before we can finalize those numbers, but in general, we're able to allocate money to all those that qualified in a decent amount, and then we've had businesses kind of rolling in late because it was a short turnaround time for applications, and we've been continuing to review that. So I'm hoping that we can have that finalized by Thursday, and that'll be confirmed with Councilmember Lingle once we get that finalized and get the award letters out. An update on the utility tax repayment option and grant. So far, I believe Dana said we've only had a few folks respond. Over 70 letters were sent out. I have received one personal message from someone who this is going to help out significantly, but we also will be resending the letter out in Spanish, because that is one area that got missed. It's the rush of and the speed of things right now, but I suspect a lot of our residents that are in need may actually be our communities that are non-native English speakers. So we'll get that out again, and I'm hoping that we have more response and that people take advantage of the program to make their financial burden a little bit easier. And with that, I think that's all I have for right now. Councilmember Iyer?
I'm not on Facebook, but is there any way that I'm not, maybe you pushed it out on Facebook already in terms of trying to get the kind of human network going of, getting on Facebook to try to say, if you know someone that's having trouble that you think might need assistance, please. I appreciate the extra effort.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident that Sean has pushed that out, but we need to push it out a few more times before the deadline. I think it's possible that folks may not have opened the letter. And we also have an issue with mail not arriving in time right now. I know that at least one person in my household hasn't received a ballot yet, but the rest of us did, and they're all mailed out at the same time. So we are having some slowdowns in the mail in general, and we need to see what we can to reach those people. So thank you. That's definitely good feedback. Great. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to Councilmember McHenry.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone. I think it was the meeting before last where we worked through all those survey questions and nitpicked them and kind of perfected them. And so I closed the survey. I sent that email to council, directors, and the mayor this afternoon with results. And I thought we had a really good response. And I know going into budget season here and looking through everything, reading through all those responses is going to really help me work through all the budget process. So I just wanted to thank everyone again for working through that and getting it turned out really quickly.
Thank you, Councilmember McHenry. Councilmember Hoag?
So at our committee of the whole meeting, Councilmember Iyer mentioned a Seattle Times article that talks about King County sales tax and about a homeless housing plan. And I just wanted to mention that this is a topic that was discussed at Sound Cities for the last couple of meetings that we've had at the Public Issues Committee meeting. And so I will forward you minutes from those meetings so that you can, read what's been discussed most recently regarding this. So I wasn't prepared to discuss it right now, but I'll forward it to the council members to read up on. And maybe you know more about it, Mayor, being part of Sound Cities.
Other cities have had a lot more involvement with it. I think part of our challenge, and we do need to look into it further, but I think part of our challenge is if we were to implement the tax as a city, would we have enough to even do anything with? And would it cost us more to administer something or even contract out with somebody to make the program work? And so that's part of the analysis that has to happen. I was kind of waiting to see what happens with some of the other cities. I believe Kent and Renton and I think North Bend are looking at passing their own tax so that they can make sure more of it goes to their own city, but they also have a very different demographic than we do. So we will be looking into it further, and I very much appreciate you sending your notes from Sound Cities so that we can, now that we're getting more into the easy part of the budget for staff, that we can look into this a little further. So thank you. All right, do we have any council committee reports? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to administration.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to just bring up a quick bullet point. Good evening. So this evening I have a couple of updates for the council and members of our community. Our consultant contracts that we've talked about a couple of times, and the FAC is working on a procurement policy. We heard loud and clear last week that we want to make sure that our new policy is implemented with our newer contracts. So what we've proposed, working with the mayor, and actually Director Laniszewski recommended this at the last council meeting, is to bring back our contracts for just a 6-month extension, and then we'll go back out and do our contracts consistent with the new procurement policy. Our assistant planner permit specialist interviews are this week, so we're really excited about that. The solid waste contract is being prepared for council for a November meeting, so we're excited about that. We do have our Joint Planning Commission and Council workshop next week for Rio Vista. I'll actually be sending out a packet at the end of day tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. Willow Ridge Lot 21, I've been trying to give more updates to council on a weekly basis, but also during our administrative update. Willow Ridge Lot 21 will be submitting a site plan review application likely by the end of the week. We had a final meeting with them today to look at some of their preliminary documents. We had planning commissioner interviews this week. Today was my first meeting for the King County Growth Target meeting. It was a kickoff. It was definitely an interesting meeting. I reported back to the mayor. I will be getting some additional information from the council, and I'll do a special email to council. Plus, I will get on a workshop pretty soon because they have a pretty accelerated process where they want some decision points by the city in January. So that's not going to give us a lot of time. And they are pre-designating what they believe our growth target should be. I have not received that data yet, so stay tuned for that as well. But in general, all small cities, and there are 19, I shouldn't say small cities, but cities and towns, there's 19 of us in King County, and we're being asked to take on about 5% of that population increase. So stay tuned. I don't yet have the information, but I will report back.
Ms. Thomas, add just one little bit of information that might be helpful as council starts to think about this. So I just wanted to also let folks know that Snohomish County has not started their process yet. And whatever they do in their process, King County is going to be ahead of, and it's going to be very difficult, I think, for us as the city to make recommendations and advocate for what's right for our community when we won't have the information from Snohomish County. So I just wanted to make you all aware of that, that the timing does not line up, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah, there's a couple of items that are, I think, behind, besides obviously Snohomish County being at least a year behind us. You know, we participate in the buildable lands analysis where we have to give information through the county. It's a GIS exercise that our engineer and senior planner work on. It takes usually about a year because we get 2 or 3 iterations of different information requests, and they don't yet have that report ready either. So it does feel a little bit like the cart is before the horse. So stay tuned. I will have another meeting in a couple of weeks, but as soon as I get information, I'll send that out to council. We were notified by WCIA that they are not interested in being signers of city contracts, so we will be removing WCIA in the future on our contracts. However, they will review for form if requested. Are there any questions from council? Yes, Councilmember Iyer, and you're on mute too.
Just a side note on that conversation of growth targets and King County and Snohomish County. Mike Remington, Councilmember Remington can speak to this as well. The WIRA 7 process was really interesting in the difference that you saw from the King County entity and the Snohomish County entity in terms of how they looked at these areas out of the UGA in essentially in our area, and it was striking, the difference in terms of King County. At least the folks at the table there, they really were hesitant to project the high end of development in this area for whatever reason that I can only guess as to the politics or the desire of planning. And Snohomish County was definitely different in terms of they were like, yeah, sure, you want as many people as we can fit here, we'll tell you. So I think there's definitely going to be that dichotomy. As a King County resident, I was living in this area. I think I can say this. I was encouraged. I liked where they were headed, where their heads were at least from the folks that we heard from in that group. So just sorry, FYI.
No, thank you for that, Councilmember Iyer. It is interesting. I know that the mayor attended the last PSRC meeting, but Snohomish County was trying to get an amendment to the 2050 vision to include additional housing units in their, I'll just say, in their unincorporated areas. And I believe it failed, but there may have been, did the amendment, Mayor, get approved?
No. So I think part of the challenge, to Councilmember Iyer's point, is, Snohomish County is looking high. King County appears to be looking kind of in the middle. One of the consternation, concerning issues and challenging issues that PSRC has been dealing with over the years is that oftentimes the counties pick, you have a low, middle, and high estimate of your population growth, and they typically choose the middle so that they don't make builders mad and they don't make the environmentalists mad. So that puts cities in a bind when you're in King County in particular, because those projected growth numbers are not necessarily accurate for what's actually going to come to your community, and all of your plans are based on those numbers.
Yeah,
So,
they're definitely hedging the average again.
yeah, and as we saw from the last update, the average was not even close to accurate, and I think pretty much everyone is really moving towards their growth targets at a rapid pace, and with land rights, there's not much we can do about it. And so we need to pay attention to that, and I think be pretty vocal as it moves forward and make sure that whatever comes out is realistic and reasonable, and trying to do what we can to manage what we can take on as a city.
Yeah, I let the mayor know that there's quite a few cities. There's 19 cities that are going, actually, I'm sorry, 29 cities are going to be sharing 14,000 in population. So I'm not sure where all the other cities are, but in case you didn't know, all of our valley cities are in that category, but so is Sammamish.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are some really large, some much larger cities as well. And so I don't know if they'll take more of the share. We are going to go through an exercise of kind of what are our local characteristics, you know, kind of what does each community look like. And I actually recommended going through that exercise because I don't know anything about Pacific or Algona, and we have to come to a consensus. They expect us in that group to come to a consensus and come back to our councils and deliver that news. I don't know how well that's going to work, but that is their model, at least going forward. So stay tuned.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas.
Thank you.
Councilmember Naplin, you had a question?
Yeah, I actually attended the transportation. Well, they did a combined transportation board meeting today, and then we broke out into our individual and Eastside Transportation Partnership Group. And there was a lot of discussion about, you know, sort of equity in, you know, return of services. And, you know, what's happened is they've, you know, cut service, so it's so infrequent, so then less people use it, things like that. And so when we're talking about growth targets and where people are going to go, the whole concept of growth management is that, you know, you have sufficient roads, you have, you know, transit oriented communities. That's why we're building dense in cities. And so I guess I don't know if that ever gets discussed at any of the other, yeah.
Absolutely. And it's one of the things that we're going to talk about. So really, thank you for bringing that up. At this point, like I said, I haven't seen the number, but you know, we have a lot of what we call pipeline, and I'm worried that our pipeline honestly is going to be over what our new growth target is.
Yeah.
And that's really a problem for us trying to tell our story to the community.
Right. Well, and if it's already coming and they have property, you know, rights to develop, I think we need to, you know, do we have park and ride? Are we asking for bus service? Do we even have a spot? You know, I know there's been some talk about, you know, sharing usage of a parking facility with a church. I mean, I think we need to be extremely proactive as we're designing our new developments. And even, I don't know, in the design standards that were just talked about in the COW, do we need to have a spot for bus pullouts? You know, thinking ahead. And, you know, you look at those roads that are narrow, that don't even have enough room for parking. How is transit going to, you know, fit into that? So I guess my concern is if they aren't going to improve our roads and they aren't planning out, we really need to start contemplating making sure transit is an option for the density that's coming in here. And especially if we're going to have, you know, more apartment units with limited parking, it's just so critical, in my opinion, for the livability. Otherwise, I think we're all going to become miserable out here. The whole reason we moved to Duval is going to go away.
The good news is that we actually are going to have the target before we go through our 2024 comp plan process. So it'll give us a lot more opportunity to update standards, to put some goals and policies in place, to work with transit. So at least we are doing that right this time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for keeping us informed about the process. I really appreciate it.
Great. Mayor Pro Tem Remington.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the things I just wanted to reiterate, I think I've said it before, it's something that Bellevue's mayor said after many years of service. He said there was a lot of money pouring into Bellevue and they used that money for all kinds of things. But he said after 20 years, he realized something very important, that growth does not pay for growth. And so it gets to the point of, do you have the capacity with roads, water? We have our own wastewater management plant. Does that have the capacity? So Laura, I appreciate your representing us and again, keeping us informed as well. We have a lot of detail we'll need before we can weigh in as a city. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think it'll also spur the transportation planning conversation this time around that's been starting to build. So that'll be good for everyone. Moving on to the King County Fire District 45 report, Chief Burke, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, and thank you for the opportunity to talk a little bit about the fire department and what's going on with us. So calls, October, we are already busy this month, but September was even more so. We tied our record for our busiest September that was set back in 2011 with 107 calls for service. Our year-to-date total is at 799, is 11 behind our rolling 5-year average. We're on the same busy pace. We're at 69 calls so far for the month of October. Our deputy chief position for the last year and a half has been filled by an interim that came from the labor ranks, Ryan Dory. He served very well in that. We've really appreciated the work that he's done, but as we prepare to open the new station, he will be transitioning back to shift at the rank of captain. So that will leave our DC position vacant again. And we are working on a plan to fill that hopefully in the first quarter of next year. And I'll keep you updated on that as that moves along. October is also important to us in the fire service for Fire Prevention Week. And in line with everything else that we've all complained about with the pandemic and how it's changing our lives, one of the things that is really passionate to us is being able to go to the schools and educate the children. And obviously the kids aren't in the school, so we aren't either. So we had to do something. And we tasked our crews with coming up with personalized fire prevention videos that we shared electronically with the students through their classes so they could watch those, as well as they're posted on YouTube. And I'd be happy to provide a link for you if you're interested in seeing that. But I really want to recognize firefighter Ted Sittner, who was our producer director and put the whole thing together. And then firefighter Matt Mundy, who was the actual presenter. And they did a great job. And so, even in the, I guess, the weird times that we're in, we're still trying to deliver our message and connect with our community. Next topic I have for you is on inspections. And I know that is something that the council has been waiting to hear some updates on. And I'm pleased to announce that our inspector trainee, John McKinnon, successfully passed his ICC Inspector 1 test last week. Now, that doesn't mean he's ready to jump in with both feet or anything else. There's a few other things we need him to work on, as well as experience in mentoring. But he is signed up for 2 other classes on residential sprinkler systems and plans review. So all of those will work well together, and we're continuing to plug him into everything here within the community. And then also putting him with Woodinville so he gets experience. And even though Barry's no longer with Woodinville, whoever winds up in that role, he will partner with them to try to continue to gain experience and comfort in the inspection process. So we're working on that. I believe he's also been added to the list for DRC, and if he hasn't, he will be participating in those meetings regularly. So next on my list is new hires. And Mayor, I noticed that you were talking about the swearing in of a new police officer, always an exciting time. I will have such an opportunity coming next month, as we have issued conditional offers of employment to 5 firefighter applicants. And so this is a very exciting time for us, a very top-notch group of applicants. I think it's probably one of the best classes I've seen with the numbers of really high qualified people. So we're very excited. Their first day on the books, they will be here on Monday, November 2nd, and start a little mini academy here on days. And then they will work to the the shift with the rest of the firefighters when we open the new station. That's a good transition for me as I segue into talking about the new station. Very exciting there. Paving was underway today. So 318th and the approach to Cherry Valley, the parking lots, all that was completed today. And we are still online for a substantial completion date of November 30th. So with the owner furnished, the fire district, items such as toning and alerting equipment, radios, furniture, etc., I anticipate that we will probably open either Monday, December 7th, or the following Monday on the 14th. And so I'll give you more. And depending on where we are with the pandemic and the restrictions and things, we will do some type of a ceremony, whether it's virtual and we provide a link. If we can go to a small to a mid-sized group, then there will be some opportunity for city dignitaries to join us there if you're interested in that. But I'll have more of that for you at the November meeting. Lastly, related to the pandemic, our calls for COVID-related responses continue to drop, and our interactions with COVID patients are numbering less than 1 per month. Now, that doesn't mean that everything is all better or any of the rest of that. I'm just saying that we're seeing less people, which is a good thing. And related to that, I'll go ahead and give you a preliminary update that with all of the volume of PPE, protective equipment that we've been using, and with all the risk and the way things have changed in the way that we do our business on medical or EMS calls, we are having to switch to a welder's respirator. And it's a mask. It won't be the paper mask. It won't be the little cloth mask or anything else. We're having trouble keeping up with supply because our burn rate is so high depending on the number of medical calls we're running. So a lead in the county, what we've started doing is we are trying to procure their welding mask, and it's a mask mounted regulator, or excuse me, a respirator, and it has a cartridge on each side. It's a strange look. It's similar to what our SCBA masks are, except over the nose and mouth only. It's going to look funny, and we're going to do an educational campaign to let the community know what to expect, because our crews will be wearing those on every EMS related call. And they look a little funny, they sound a little funny. And so that education, trying to get out in front of it so we don't scare any children, we want to make sure that we do that. So I'm giving you a heads up for that. And we'll probably go on social media with a little bit of a video and a hello, it's us, even though we don't, we're wearing a different mask, or we'll come up with something clever to introduce it and make sure that the community is aware and prepared before we start. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions from the mayor or the council.
Mayor Pro Tem Remington.
Thank you, Chief. Was the change in the mask to a respirator due to difficulty getting the PPE for firefighters, or was it simply the cost of replenishing it?
No, excellent question. And I appreciate that. It was some of both, but let's be honest, the cost of doing business, there's no way around that, right? So we've got to be able to run the calls. But what it really boiled down to is, per state law, we are required to fit test each one of our responders with whatever type of mask that they're wearing. And some of the masks, and I'm not meaning to knock the county or any of those agencies that were helping us with PPE supplies, but some of them are failing at the fit test, and they just aren't working at all. And so we needed to come up with something reliable, because the high quality masks that we're used to having pre-pandemic are not available in the quantities that we're needing. And I say we collectively, as in the zone, the state, the country, et cetera, there's just a big demand for those. More people are using them. And so we have to react a little bit and do something different. And just to expand on that, one other thing, we are masking any of our patients as well. And so our burn rate is not just for our crews, but it's the people that we see. And so it's a preventative thing. And I think it's done really well for our community, because we have had no contacts or spreads or any of those types of things with our people or family members of patients that we've transported. So to your question, it's not cost driven as much as it is safety and convenience. And one other point I'll make is that there is not a regular burn rate with these mask mounted respirators with the cartridges, because they can be deconned And unless we're putting smoke and particulate matter and stuff like that, the cartridges have a pretty extended life. And so the initial cost, we'll spend probably $1,000 to $1,200 to outfit our crews. And then after that, it'll just be maintenance beyond that. So maybe a couple of $100 a year, even at the rate that we're using now.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Chief Burke? All right. Well, thank you very much. I know it's a crazy year for sure, and I'm glad you guys are finding ways to keep staying safe.
Well, I can't wait till we can all be in the same room together, but I'm glad we're not, to be safe, if you know what I mean.
I absolutely do. Thank you, Chief Burke.
Thanks for the opportunity.
All right, moving on. We do have a public hearing this evening. And then the public hearing is to receive input on revenue sources for the 2021-2022 biennial budget, including consideration of possible increases in property tax revenue for 2021. And Ms. Mason will be providing this presentation. And so with that, I will open the public hearing. And just for those on the line, the process is to go through the presentation from the finance director. Anybody that is on the line is welcome to provide public comment, and the hearing is closed after that, and council will discuss it under new business. So with that, Ms. Mason.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Can you hear me? Yes. All right. So I'll just get started. On the agenda, we'll just do a really brief outlook. Revenue big picture, go over some operating revenues, building and permit revenues, utility fund revenues, restricted revenues, other notable revenues, and then next steps in the budget process. So I just thought this was interesting. King County unemployment rate 2018 was 3.2, 2019 2.8, and the forecasted unemployment rate is 7.7 for 20. And then 5.5, improving a little bit in 2021. And then these numbers are from REIT, but average sale in 2018 of a house in Duval was $527,000. In 19, it was a little bit lower. And then through 2020, it's $740,000. And I also wanted to mention that city sales tax revenues continue to be strong despite the economic downturn. So here's our big picture of revenue. Budgeted revenues or proposed budgeted revenues for the biennium are just over $47 million, with a big chunk of that coming from charges for goods and services. The second highest is, taxes, which includes property taxes, sales tax, utility tax, and REIT. And then transfers in are the third highest source of revenue, and that's transfers from fund to fund, primarily from transfers from operating funds and other CIP funds into capital improvement project funds. And then miscellaneous intergovernmental is next with 11%, and that's mainly grants and then state shared revenues. And then finally, miscellaneous revenues is about 9%. And that, with the bulk of that money being general facility charges from the utility funds. So this budget is proposed to be 44% higher in revenue than the prior biennium, mainly due to the increase in charges for services, transfers in, intergovernmental services, and then tax revenue. So that charges for services is increasing about $5.2 million. A big chunk of that is the school impact fees, which is new for this biennium. Utility billings, or the charges that the water, sewer, and storm drainage fund charge residents, are increasing mainly due to population increase in new accounts by $1.4 million. Street impact fees, because of new development, are proposed to be about almost 600,000 more. And then there's the internal service fund charges for services, that the funds that charge departments for their services, the equipment replacement fund, the IT fund, and the building maintenance fund. Transfers in are budgeted to be about $3.4 million more than the prior biennium. And this isn't all from, it's not all from CIP funds, but this is the total amount that is being transferred to CIP funds in the 2021 biennium or 21-22 biennium. And then intergovernmental services, this isn't, it's budgeted to be $3.1 million over the prior biennium. And a big chunk of that is grant revenue that the city hopes to receive from two capital projects. And then taxes are proposed to be $2.1 million over the prior biennium. A big chunk of that is from transportation benefit district sales tax. Other is from, it's also from sales tax, just regular sales tax, about $450,000 from real estate excise tax, and then about $460,000 from property tax. And we'll go over these taxes in just a few moments. So here's the big three operating revenues for the city. Property tax, which is split into the general fund and the street fund. Sales tax, which is mainly in the general fund besides the transportation benefit district tax. And then utility tax, which is the tax the general fund collects on the utilities for charges for services and other utilities as well. So we'll just start with property tax. The 2020 regular levy, this is the amount that is being proposed, and it does include the 1% increase. With the increase, property tax is budgeted about $2,033,577 for 21, but it includes this additional $20,000 that the city is asking for because King County hasn't finalized its adjustments. So we can ask for more and maybe get that amount, but if we ask for less and the property tax, the levy comes in higher, we won't get more. So it's always good just to add a little bit. But the total levy increase over just the regular property tax from the prior biennium is almost $17,900, and that's about 97 or 0.9% increase when all is said and done. When you include these re-levied refunds, and then we're also getting this amount from new construction, which is kind of cool. So I like this slide because it kind of shows it's new construction over the years, and you can just see how in the last 5 years we're just it's just booming. And then here's the city's property tax, and you can see that as the assessed value goes up, the city levy actually goes down. So the amount that a property tax owner pays per 1,000 goes down a little bit. And this orange highlight right here is the year that the levy lift for the Big Rock payments, the school resource officer, and IT improvements came into play. And then I also wanted to show you this because it's a little bit of a mystery to me, but we've kind of been doing a little digging. You can see that we actually went down these years. And I found something that said the city has taken the 1% property tax increase since 1985. So it's unusual that it's come down. I'm going to look into it further and see what happened, but these numbers are from the King County Assessor's Office. And then you can see us just getting a little bit higher every single year, which is kind of neat. Sales tax revenue has also been increasing consistently over the years. This amount right here is the amount that's budgeted for 2020. And as we look at the budget book and these graphs, just remember that the 2020 budget is simply, or estimate, is simply what's left over from the biennial budget after 2019 actual has been removed. So as we improve or update the budget book, as soon as we get our year-end biennial adjustments, these numbers will change again and we'll present them. But this is the actual estimate. So here's what we budgeted for 2020 for sales tax, and this is the actual estimate for 2020 based on what we've received so far. So, and then 2021 is a 5% increase over 2020, and 2022 is a 6% increase over 2021. And this is I think these are pretty conservative numbers still. And then I also want to just kind of show you what's been going on year to date since it's September year to date 2019 to 2020, you can see that retail trade in 2020 has just skyrocketed. It's so the increase overall from January to September is almost 55,000 or 6.6% increase. And then $77,000 of that increase is from retail trade, which also includes online sales. And then you can see sales tax from construction has decreased, but that's slowly coming back up. So it might even out at the end of the year. And then accommodation and food service is still a little bit lower than 2019, but that also might come back, or it's on its way back, I should say. Here's our utility tax revenue. And the next slide will just show you the different types of utility tax that the city receives, but you can see it's also been kind of consistently increasing until it stopped. And I'll show you on the next slide, you know, we're anticipating a slight increase in 21-22 over 2020, but we just left the 2020 estimate at where the budget stands. So you can see the increases are from interfund utility taxes, and the general fund charges water, sewer, and storm drainage, an admin fee, or not an admin fee, a utility tax that goes into the general fund. So as those charges for services go up, so do these numbers. So those are the big increases that you see right here. Telephone tax, we just conservatively left flat. Business tax from cable TV has been decreasing over the years, so we're budgeting for a decrease in the next biennium. Garbage, we're budgeting for an increase, and I think that this number will actually go up a little bit when we do our end of the biennium budget adjustments. And then we left business tax for electricity a little bit flat because it has been a little flat the last few years, but we can certainly do an adjustment if we think necessary. And then other operating revenues, gambling tax we're budgeted to increase about $15,000 over the next biennium, and that matches the averages that were received towards the end of 2019 and when 2020 was still doing well. State shared revenues, the state shared revenue of the intergovernmental revenues, those are mainly allocated per capita: marijuana excise tax, liquor excise tax, criminal justice, liquor board profits, motor vehicle in the street fund. Those are actually slightly increasing over the prior biennium. And then fines and forfeitures, we are budgeting to decrease just because lower district court revenues due to the pandemic, and then a reduction in late fees for water services. Building and permits fund, new. So I pulled this out of the general fund, and you can see building and permanent revenue over the last few years. Here's the 2020 budget, which will probably go up a little bit. And then here's 2021 and 2022 estimates. And that is mostly because of about $2.4 million in school impact fees that are being budgeted in this fund. So if we look at it without the school impact fees, you can see, you know, we kind of had a little decrease. This budget, as I said, might go up even higher than it is right here. And then we have small increases, or actually development really staying steady between 2021 and 2022. Utility funds. So here's, this is just the charges for services for the water, sewer, and storm drainage. And what we did, here's the 2020 budget. And here's actually the estimate, which is actually what we think we're going to get in this year. And it's also a little on the conservative side. So we looked at what we've gotten this year. We added 2 more months because we don't add December, because that is taken out. We don't actually receive those monies in 2020 because we're cash basis. And then you can just see we've got a 5.5% increase in 2021 and 2022, primarily due to new development. And then here's some of our restricted revenues. So you can see here's REIT 1 and 2 added together over the years, just kind of getting higher and higher. And you can kind of see that when you look at the property tax as well, the new construction, it's just jumping up these last few years. 2020, we think it's going to be higher due to a big sale that just occurred, but we will, and as soon as we have a better idea of that number, we'll have that as our year end or end of biennium budget adjustment. And then we've adjusted, this is actually what we're gonna think without, we think we're gonna get without the big sale that just occurred. So this will actually go up a little bit. And then we adjusted 21 and 22 down because those, the units, it's being sold as a property and we won't be seeing those units in the next biennium sold as separate housing, I guess. And then here's our park impact fee for, this goes up and down. Here's our 2021 budget. We actually think that we're just gonna get one permit in this year. So that will be adjusted down for the year end, end of the year biennium. And then we've based these off of the 175 permits that we're kind of using throughout this budget as our base. And then street impact fees, the same. You can see it go up and down. Here's our 2020 budget. Here's the estimate, which is a little bit lower because we anticipate getting 21 to 23 street impact fees in this year. And then you can see that 2021 or the 2021 estimate has kind of skyrocketed and it goes back down in 2022. And then other notable revenue, Big Rock activity fees, we projected them down to 25% of average in 2021. So it's down $70,000 for the biennium. And we actually will have to do an end of the biennium budget adjustment for that because we're estimating that we'll receive $35,000 in 2020. The Transportation Benefit District, I already mentioned this number, but the $150,000 that we think we're going to get in 2020, and we've received a big chunk of this, hasn't been budgeted. So we will also do that as a year-end budget adjustment. And then, as I mentioned, state shared revenues are increasing slightly despite the downturn, and that money is it's mainly per capita at a small amount per capita. And then grant revenue, two big TIB grants the city hopes to receive for the 3rd Avenue Northeast roadway and sidewalk improvements, and a $280,000 community development block grant for the 142nd sidewalk extension. And then one more, the internal service fund charges for services. Equipment replacement fund is charging or expects to get about $350,000 more in revenue than the prior biennium, primarily because we've changed the way that we're allocating and charging the funds for vehicles. And we're trying to fully fund the vehicles. So as one needs to be replaced, the money is just sitting in the fund and it's a no-brainer. And then IT is budgeted to receive this fund about $190,000 more than the prior biennium. And that's mainly due to a proposed increase in IT services. And then building maintenance is actually going down, and that's mainly because we've moved the capital or the CIP expenditures out of the internal service fund and into a CIP fund. And then you can see just based on development, the general facility charges, water expects to get about $380,000 more than the prior biennium, sewer about almost $600,000 more, and storm drainage about $40,000 less than the prior biennium. So what's next? We've got the preliminary budget hearing 1 and 2 meetings in November. The property tax ordinance has to be passed before November 30th. Budget adoption, hopefully on December 1st, but if not, if needed, we can do it on December 15th. And then I just put a question about the salaries and benefits ordinance. It's something that we would like to do it, but it kind of depends on the timing of union negotiations. And then we hope to have end of biennium amendments to the 2019-2020 biennial budget at the November 17th meeting. So I always feel like I talk way too fast. Are there any questions?
Sorry, I was on mute. With that, this is the time for the public to provide public comment. If someone is on the line and would like to provide public comment, the clerk will let, oh, looks like the clerk has let you in. So now would be the time to do that. I'm not seeing any, but I'll give it another 30 seconds just in case. Okay, it looks like no one would like to speak to the public hearing, so we will close the public hearing and move on to the biennial budget book. Ms. Mason, and for council and the public, this is the first time that I'm aware of in our city's history that we've had a budget book before January. So Ms. Mason had a fantastic intern, and all the departments worked really hard to get the narratives into this document. And I think it'll alleviate a lot of questions folks have, and it's just very well done, especially for this early in the budget process. So I just want to preface with that.
Okay, so let me, where, oh gosh, am I still sharing my screen?
You are not.
I'm not, am I? Oh, there it is. Okay, I'm on it. All right. So I will put this into the council presentation folder on OneDrive as soon as we're done. But here it is. Here's the biennial, the preliminary biennial budget. And I just wanted to preface by saying that the 2019 numbers are actual. The 2020 numbers in here are what's left of the biennial budget, the 2019-20 biennial budget, and we will update this as soon as decisions are made and changes are made. So, and especially when the end of the biennial numbers are adjusted. So the first page is just the cover, and this is down in the McCormick part. I thought it was really cool because it says local right there. But the table of contents is really great. You can just click anywhere and it will bring you to the spot you want to go. I'll go back here. There's a city overview, the proposed city organization chart. This is with the positions that we hope to have filled at the end of by the end of the biennium. The lovely city council, our elected officials and administration. And then we have the mayor's budget message for you to enjoy and read. I'm gonna scroll through this. All right, so here's the budget book overview with just a little bit about the budget process for, for people who aren't familiar with it, the budget calendar. And then here's the proposed revenue and expenditures overview. So it just kind of talks about the city fund and structure, and then just big picture, almost like this presentation of what's going on in the budget. So charges for services by categories, some trend analysis, lots of really fun stuff. And then it has revenue by fund. And then we get to the expenditures section. And again, this is for overall for the entire budget. Same type of thing, just a little bit of information about the increases in expenditures over the prior biennium, and then expenditures by fund. And then here comes the really fun part, the department summaries. So the general fund kind of has its own section in each one of the departments. The general fund has a really long section, and then we dive into the different departments. So there's a page for each department. There's a lovely picture of community services or a summer stage. I'm just going to scroll down until we get to the end of the general fund. Actually, you know what I'll do? I'll go up to the table of contents. And so there's, let's see, there's the special revenue funds. So this again is similar to a department summary, but for the street fund, the transportation benefit district, building improvement, Big Rock, and Stimson area. There's a narrative about the debt services, and then there's overviews of the water, sewer, and storm drainage, equipment rent for replacement information, and technology fund, and the building maintenance fund. And then there's the capital improvement fund, which have narratives and kind of list out the projects. And then if you click on capital projects, this has the proposed capital projects. It's got a summary of sources and uses. So you can see all the projects over here, how the city is proposing to pay for them, and then what will be left after the city pays for them as well. And then there's a picture and a little description of each one of the projects on the next few pages. And then finally, at the very end is the city's financial policies. So, and that's it really. It was, I mean, it was a team effort getting this done. And this is preliminary, so there are some things, I mean, if you read through this and you see something that you can't stand because there's a typo, or please just let me know and we will fix it for the next one.
This is really focused on getting the data right, and you can always, we'll always find formatting issues and what have you, so don't hesitate to send Dana an email with that so that we can tighten it up for the final version when that's done. Does anyone have any questions on this? Mayor Pro Tem Remington.
Thank you, Mayor. Nicely done, Dana. This is a product I'd really like to go through page by page. Is that going to be in our budget folder?
Yes.
Yes, I'm going to put it in there right now.
Is it possible you could send us all a link? I hate to say I'm that lazy, but I'm probably that lazy. But I do think this is an important product for us all to take a look. This is kind of that budget story and a narrative, as well as some of the data. And I think it will really help us both to create questions as well as have a better understanding of the proposed budget.
Yeah, and we'll also post it online. So post it on the website as well.
Perfect.
Councilmember Utter.
I don't know if this is a real faux pas, but could I request a printed copy?
You can have a printed copy. I'll have a printed copy too. So don't, yeah. It's not a faux pas. Eventually everyone will get printed copies that wants them. Councilmember Napland.
Sorry, I had myself not on mute and my little one came in. Anyway, I just wanted to request if this, I know it's preliminary and hopefully it says all over preliminary, but if this can be available to the public as well, I think that's important. I've looked at other cities and I found their preliminary budget books. And so I think it is common that, you know, the public, because otherwise I don't think the public really understands what we're doing. And this new format is super impressive. I haven't seen it personally, but just from what I've seen so far, just kind of understanding the projects. And if we're, like we had a public hearing today on revenues, and, this would be a perfect document for the public if they wanted to browse through it and try to understand what was going on. If they did have feedback, they would have something, that they might have feedback on, because otherwise, kind of hard to imagine what the public would be giving us feedback on if we haven't given them any information, really. So,
Councilmember, you missed it, but yes, it's going to be posted on.
That would be fabulous. And maybe, I wonder, is that something that could, maybe Sean could just let people know that it's.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
That'd be great.
Yeah, so we, obviously I had some technical problems with the budget message saving the way it was supposed to. Finally got that fixed out. So we'll have Sean convert that to a social media type thing, and also have the link to the full budget documents that are public, so that folks can go through that. And I think in general, the budget book is all the public's really going to need, unless they really want to dig into spreadsheets. And so, yeah, that will be posted online, definitely.
Jody has already put it in. She's so patient. It's already in your folder.
Right. Anyone else? Clerk Wyckoff?
I just wanted to, just an overarching thing for anything related to this budget, the link that I send you every week with the packet documents is the same link you can use to get to the budget. So if you just go back to one of my old emails, follow it to the council packets OneDrive folder, the 2021-2022 budget is a subfolder of that main folder.
Thank you. All right, so if we're not seeing any other questions on this, we'll move on. You know, I will say this is just really exciting that this got done. And so I'm glad that council's seems to be pretty pleased with it as well. It was a big effort to get it out, but we weren't sure until this afternoon if we were going to be able to get it out today or not. So that's how tight our timeline was. But with Dana's help, we did it. So moving on to the non-departmental budget presentations, Ms. Mason.
Sorry. I'm almost there. So good evening again, Council and Mayor Pro Tem. So the general fund department summaries that are shown on the following slides, they either have a very small FTE allocation or they have no FTEs allocated at all. So we just put them in one slide. Most of them just have one line item. So legal services summary, this used to be in the non-departmental section, and we pulled this out into its own department. And you can see that the legal services are increasing by about 25% over the prior biennium, mainly due to an increase in use of the city attorney, but also due to an increase in cost, the hourly cost. And the utility funds are actually, if any city attorney services are used specifically for utility funds, water, sewer, storm drainage, those are going to go into and be charged into those funds during the biennium. Community services. Did you want to talk about this one, Jody? I can't remember if we were.
I can, yeah. So community services is, and Dana, you're going to have to hop in here. It used to be the community events. It was just a rename, correct? So
yes.
The fund, all the bars numbers and whatnot that are associated with it are the same, but we just changed the name to better reflect what is covered in this fund. And we also moved Summer Stage out of the Cultural Commission Fund into the Community Services Fund as part of the, that is one of the bigger changes that you're going to see in the 21-22 budgeted amounts. This also covers our holiday, what are we calling it now? Light Up Duval event, as well as any human services grant funding that the council allocates. I think that's it. Yes, I think I got it.
Okay, and I think this one is you too, Jody.
Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting three-way partnership, I guess four-way partnership. We get an annual grant from the Port of Seattle, and with those funds, we partner with Mountains to Sound Greenway, who does projects on behalf of Savor Snoqualmie Valley. So, and then we do have a match to those grant funds. And so that is what you will see in the budget is we pay the full amount of the invoice and then get about, I think it's 49% of the cost back through the grant. Recycling, this is funding for our annual recycle events and programs. It is fully reimbursed by King County and state grants. If we don't spend outside of what the grant funds allow. And just starting last year, the year before, we started, instead of staffing the event with city staff, we have started to contract with a consultant who runs the events on our behalf. This one's yours.
So the emergency management summary, so this tracks every expenditures related to emergency preparedness and disaster. 2021 includes $25,000 for a comprehensive emergency plan update. The 2020 estimate, of course, will go up because of all the COVID-related expenditures and the increase in human services grants. And actually, I think those will go in the community services budget, but this amount will go up quite a bit in 2020.
I do want to add on that onto the emergency management summary is right now the salaries and wages are not included, but that's part of what we're going to be looking at reallocating next year, just not in time for this budget process, because I think as folks know, over the last 3 years, we've needed Director of Emergency Management Services much more than we ever have in the past. So we're going to have to change things around a little bit, probably in the first quarter budget amendment to reflect that, especially if we continue to be in the COVID state of emergency, which I suspect we will be.
And we've so far, we've spent about $55,000 of Mr. Tozer's salary will be allocated to in 2020. So. Civil Service Department just tracks expenditures related to testing, recruiting, advertising, candidate oral boards, and internal promotion testing for the city's police officers. And you can see it's staying very similar to the prior biennium.
There's also a small salaries that is for Alana McCoy's time spent as the secretary. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
City mitigation summary. I don't know if Laura's still here. She might have to jump in on this one, but this is just where we're tracking the cost of using outside sources to facilitate inspections for maintenance areas that are needed for previously completed city projects. And here's the Cultural Commission. I think this is you, Jody.
Sure. So these are funds that will be used for Cultural Commission projects and programming. Arts Alive, Northwest Art and Wine Walk, Jug Band. I believe they're looking at a new program with a traveling kids show in 2021. There is also the 2021 expenditures also include a $10,000 for public art that was obligated by the city through a developer agreement. This also has some salaries and wages, which would be, again, Ms. McCoy's time spent as the city liaison for the Cultural Commission.
And then here's the non-departmental summary. So this is all the stuff that has been reallocated to different departments. So, I mean, we left the interfund services in here because we wanted it to line up perfectly with the budget, and we didn't know how to actually, I didn't want to go back and figure out how to actually allocate those out to the department just for budgeting purposes. So we left them in here, but you can see the transfers out have decreased slightly from the general fund to other funds. And I'm trying, mainly because the general fund is not transferring as much operating, and then also because of the contingency fund, it's not transferring any money into the contingency fund, or we don't have any proposed to be transferred in 21-22. And then the one-time expenditures for all these different funds, the emergency management update, Culture Commission, as Jody mentioned, the public art in lieu of fee, the culture, and then on new in 2021, also this ongoing is the traveling children's show that Jody mentioned. Community services is also getting a WCIA insurance allocation for the rec building, or the rec and the depot buildings. And then also internal service fund charges for equipment for the mobile stage and building for rec and depot. And then additionally, $33,000 annually from summer stage was moved from Cultural Commission to
Dana,
Community Services.
oh, sorry, Dana, can I make a quick note, comment on the contingency fund?
Yes.
So just for, it's in the budget book, but just for council's information, we fully funded up to our legal maximum in the last biennium. That legal maximum has increased based on our home values in the city. And at this point, I think it would be like 150,000 if we were to fully fund it with all of that new construction. But it's not budgeted today, but the intent is if our revenues come in higher than expected, that we shift some of that money directly into contingency to do what we can to keep it full. So it was just, it's hopefully, you know, we do think that revenues are projected conservatively, so that there should be room to at least move a portion of that over in 2021.
And then just the mandates for the non-departmental funds, mitigation expenditures and civil service is mandated. And there's no carryover, nothing on the cutting room floor. And are there any questions?
Councilmember Lengyel?
Yeah, I guess maybe I'm not understanding your carryover slide. Maybe I'm not understanding what that means. In a previous slide, you show, or maybe you're just because you're talking about non-departmental. Is that why that slide's blank?
Well, so carryover is, and maybe we missed something, but it's an expenditure that was budgeted to occur in 21 or 2019, 2020, and we're actually it's gonna be incurred in 21, 22 instead.
Right. Yeah, I understood that part. I was just trying to understand that the reason, I just wanted to be sure. That slide is blank because it's only the non-departmental.
Yes. There is no carryover.
I know what carryover means, believe me.
Right. None that we identified in non-departmental.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to new business. Agenda Bill 20-90A, Ordinance 2021 Property Tax Levy for discussion by Finance. Ms. Mason. Oh, Ms. Thomas, you had a question?
I just wanted to give us a reminder, since we're transitioning to our new business, about the reminder that we were going to talk about the next council meeting.
Yes, I'm going to do that at the end.
At the end? Okay, thank you.
So I don't have a lot more to say about the proposed property tax. The city would like to take the 1% increase, but I did want to say on the agenda bill, the allocation for the levy lid lift and the way everything is allocated in the revenue is incorrect. So the next time this is presented, it will be corrected.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or feedback on the property tax? I wasn't really expecting any since it's pretty routine. So if there aren't any questions, then we will move on to Agenda Bill 20-91A, Resolution for Riverview School District Impact Fee for discussion. Ms. Thomas.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and members of our community. At our last council meeting, the River School District came and gave a presentation on its capital facilities plan. And as part of that process, we adopt every year a school impact fee on behalf of the district through an interlocal agreement. And then we also collect their impact fee as well. And so we are in that process of preparing for our public hearing. But I wanted to just give you some information. The resolution is within your packet. The proposed fee for 2021 for single family homes is $13,931. It's a decrease from $15,406, which is what we're collecting right now. And then for multifamily, it's $9,288, which is an increase from $8,635. Our next steps are to hold a public hearing and to approve a resolution so we can implement the new school impact fee for the school district next year. Are there any questions?
I'm not seeing any. So if I missed a hand, unmute yourself and speak up. Oh, now I can see the full screen. I'm not seeing any, so it looks like we can move on to the next item. Agenda Bill 20-92A, resolution for Big Rock Ball Fields use policy. Mr. Laniszewski.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, citizens left in the audience. Steve Laniszewski, Public Works. So provided in the packet is some updated elements from our last discussion about the ball field use policy. Highlighted in blue are the areas of clarification and consideration as we move forward. I think the only one I didn't really receive comments or thoughts on, of course, we've had legal look at this as well, and I've confirmed the late fees correspond with how we manage late fees in general, but the resident definition, and I can throw that up on my screen real quick. So again, I think we talked, the school district says 65% because they serve, a larger boundary than us. We would consider people of our league of 50% of Duval residents. Again, I think that's still fair enough. The league, for Little League, baseball and soccer and football serve the area as well, even though certainly Little League is based out of Duval, Snow Valley North. I believe the lacrosse group is as well as is football, but they serve a greater community at large. So I'm not married to any number there. I think 50% is fair. The honest truth is, if they're one of our local agencies, we're not counting kids. So they, we trust that they're serving the community. Unlike, I think, for the special consideration we have for summer camps, if we're going to give a discount, certainly for those activities, we will be checking because there is a discounted rate for those who serve the community, if you all recall in that experiment. So 50% of the enrollees are Duval residents. It seems fair and reasonable from what we've seen. And if anybody has any specific comments on that item itself, more than happy to entertain changing it or leaving it. Just anybody? No comments?
I'm not seeing any. So I guess the next question would be, does council want to move this to the next agenda for approval, or do you want to wait longer?
I guess, and then quickly, Mayor, before we get to the end, I did work with Daniel a little bit on wording. We don't want to give any special consideration that we've discussed for grant support in the future, but I left this loose definition in here, or kind of just a little explanation. We can change this policy at any time if the council, if we receive a grant or want to work on a grant and we need partnerships, the community is going to work together. So I think that's something we thought was fair enough to say, hey, something happens in the future, we can always change this. I know, staff, as well as I would probably speak for council, we're going to support partnerships because they're going to make the best and most sense as we move forward, especially for parks and those types of activities. So anyway, that was a little language we thought we would provide. Not committing us to anything, but certainly saying, hey, if you're going to help us out in the future, we'll work on something. So.
Great. Anybody have any? Oh, Councilmember Napland.
Super quick, I just had a question about the late fee. 10% annualized is an incredibly high rate. And, some of the organizations are run by volunteers, and, they might owe multiple thousands of dollars in a given month, and 10% is a pretty big number. I don't know if there's a cap and then a percentage after the cap. I'm just thinking that you could run into a situation where the amount could be somewhat unreasonable. Would you want to waive it? Would you make an exception? It just seems like maybe a consideration. I don't know what is normal for another city, but you know, charging a couple $100 late fee. I don't know. Just a thought. Just I don't know.
So this is mimicking the difference here, which is a good perspective. This mimics our utility billing. And then after your second month, you're just turned off. So you're not accruing any more use. You still will accrue penalty. And I know, you know, funny situation, not to pick on anybody, because like you said, they're all volunteers, but one of the leagues has a PO box somewhere that nobody was checking.
I know.
You know, so, and it was a fairly large bill. And we tend to reach out to those groups.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not married to anything. I just want to be consistent, and this is what we have in finance, and this is why we have a policy that's, you know, we're working on with council. I don't want to be perceived as giving anything away. If this needs to be written in a different manner to soften and make it where we, you know, afford latitude, I have no problem with that. But yeah. So
yeah, I hadn't really thought much more about it, but I started to think, man, some of these bills are in the thousands and thousands of dollars. And so 10% on that is a very large number. And so I didn't know what other cities charge, or I don't know, it just caught my eye.
Councilmember, that's a point well taken. I do also wonder, you know, a lot of these leagues get all of their fees up front for, so people don't even get to go to practice until people are signed up. So, you know, I'm kind of mixed on this. I do think it's a little bit high, but on the other hand, it takes a lot of staff time to follow up on invoices that are late, and it gets in the way of other work and costs the city money as well. So there might be a different number, but I think we also need to make sure that people are paying their bills on time, whether they're volunteers or not, because it's inefficient for the city. And we are looking at hopefully going to electronic payment. So for example, if a league has a purchase card or has a board member that's willing to put it on their personal card until they get paid back, we'll be able to do that. So that should, in theory, simplify things as well, and hopefully make it so it's not so difficult for folks to pay on time.
And yeah, now's the time if somebody wants to say, you know, 5% or 3%, and you know, we get.
I guess what my suggestion would be is if you're talking about staff time and then, you know, having to wait for the revenue, it could be, you know, capped at $50 or something like that, and then accrue interest beyond that. I don't know. Just a thought. You know, $50 I would think would cover, you know, some staff time to make a phone call or send out a second bill, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, and from experience too, right? You know, no matter what bill we are reviewing as directors, you know, Laura reviews her bills, I review my bills. We of course do parks as well, so there is that oversight. It's usually a quick call. Normally our repetitive user groups, this isn't really for them, right? It's for the one-timers where, you know, if we did have a charge up front with a credit card system, that would remove a lot of this issue, because again, the policy talks about, hey, if you're late, we're not going to rent you the next month, right? And if Little League, soccer, football, all these users are, you know, they don't do 1 month at a time, right? They're booking 3 months minimum. Some of the premier soccer groups are, you know, mostly year round, so they don't want to lose that either. It isn't a huge deal. I just started to be consistent with our other billing. So I'm not married to anything, but I think a flat fee is an attempt. And guess what? If it doesn't work, we can come back and say, hey, that one didn't work. Can we try something different? I mean, it's policy. You can change anytime.
Yeah, I think 10% sounds reasonable, but maybe just cap it. So, you know, one gigantic bill wouldn't suddenly mean someone paid a $500 late fee because the volunteer didn't make it to the post office in time. You know, something like that. That's all I'm saying, just in case it could get ridiculous, because some of these can get giant, I guess. But I don't know how everyone else feels, but that just jumped out at me. You know how big the bills are.
Councilmember McHenry?
Be open to capping it, and then, you know, I guess in the future, if we do come across the problem where, wow, somebody just really isn't paying it, maybe it wasn't incentive enough to get in on time, then we could revisit it. But if 50 seems a reasonable cap to everyone else, I would agree with that.
Anyone else want to speak to this? Councilmember Cook?
So I'm not sure what's normal for these kind of rentals, but as a realtor, and think about late fees that we charge on rentals. And we typically do a daily late charge up to a maximum amount. And it's usually quite large, you know, but my point is that there's a cap. So I think it'd be good to do a cap, but if after the first 30 days, they're not going to be able to rent it again, it doesn't have to go on past that, I wouldn't think. But a daily amount would motivate them to pay it as soon as possible. But I don't know that that's possible. It might be too much work for staff.
Councilmember Iyer?
What is the average? My kids are in stuff, but I pay at the beginning of the year and then I don't pay attention after that. So what is that? What are the average bills for fee rentals? So field rental for a single fee, what does it end up coming out for, like a common a month?
So typically, yeah, that would have been good to have on hand. However, I know the soccer groups, when they rent 2 to 3 fields, it's $3 to $5 a month for sure. I mean, on a good year, we're bringing in 100 G's, right, on revenue. So you figure we are going full year round now with the, you know, lacrosse and the select soccer groups through the winters, also in the summer, and then you've got, you know, baseball mixed with lacrosse in the spring, and then soccer starts up in summer again. So I mean, it due to COVID, it really stinks, but you know, we had decent bills, and I think the one, Councilmember Knapp one, I think it was like a $30,000 bill, if I don't stand corrected, on the one that was owing. And it wasn't a 1 month bill, it was a few months, but yeah, it was big.
Yeah, I mean, and that was an issue of, I think, not picking up the mail or something like that. Someone thought someone else was doing it. So I guess what I'm saying is, in that situation, if we followed this policy, you know, they would have owed what, $3,000 in a late fee, because that, you know, I mean, at some point, I think it could become somewhat ridiculous.
Councilmember Brodnicki has been waiting to speak.
So I think, for like in my business, we have a standard fee period. And of course, if it depends on how much time, and it's all based on what we have to do administratively in order to cover our workforce to process all that. So I think that's very fair. And so, yeah, $3,000 wouldn't be a good idea, but maybe $50 is too low.
Mhm.
I don't know what the administrative cost is, but for my business, which is only a handful of folks, it may start at about $60 and it goes up from there, because if we always have to have someone put it through the books, process and the accounting and everything, that gets passed on to the person who's late.
Yeah, I think there's kind of consensus to change the late fee percentage. I'm wondering, just putting a thought out loud, and then I'm going to ask council to submit your ideas to Steve Laniszewski in the next week or two. But what I'm wondering is, you know, somebody might have a $500 field rental, but it probably doesn't, or, you know, I'll say $200 field rental, and so 10% might be reasonable for that. But it might not be reasonable to have $50 for that. So I would like folks to think about having a 10% up to a specific dollar amount, and then look at a fee cap, or you know, look at that. But if you could, you know, I think nobody on staff or administration is wed to this specific thing. So if you can send in ideas for the change within the next week, that we can bring them forward to council and make a final decision, that'd be great, so we can get the policy passed. Does that work for everyone? I'm seeing one head nod, and Councilmember McHenry.
So just a quick question, maybe to start that conversation or that line of thinking, if you could just confirm what those higher end monthly amounts are, so that, because to me, I would be setting that, cap per the highest, because most likely a smaller rental is never going to hit that cap with late fees. So that would help me in my ideas and thinking of what to propose.
All right, thank you. All right, anybody else that hasn't spoken have anything else to add? Mayor Pro Tem Remington.
Thank you, Mayor. Steve, it seems like there's a big difference between those big time users that rent and the smaller ones. Is there a reason we don't tell folks, look, if you're going to use the field for a short period or one-time use, you just pay it up front and then there is no late fee?
So part of that practice is getting into cancellations and crediting. And then it's a cash flow, right? We take the money in and then they say they need money back. Does that make sense? So it becomes an accounting exercise, right? And we in Public Works manage that. We do the billing through, our finance department. So it is extra. Some of the block users we do ask for, item 6, right? We ask for a $5,000 upfront for this policy to start. So we have working on positive cash flow. They certainly can pay in advance, and mostly when it's a one-time thing, yeah, that's not a big deal. Then you don't worry about giving money back. I'm not sure it's a huge issue, and maybe it's just a check-in thing. Like, hey, I think certainly a 10% fee up to a certain amount. I'm leaning towards just thinking about it out loud. Like, same as a clear and grade permit fee, that type of minimum $70 an hour kind of thing. If 70 is a number to get an hour or a couple staff members to look at something and reissue an invoice, it takes about an hour, then I'm just going to kind of liken it to an hour's worth of work and go with the hourly rate of the folks who do that type of work for the city. So I think we can come up with something.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Iyer. You're on mute now, Councilmember.
I was off mute. Yeah, I mean, that I would be more inclined to go with that as the cap, instead of me just randomly saying $150, even though around there sounds like in terms of the general estimation of ballpark, obviously covering yourself. I mean, that's where I like the mayor's proposal concerning the 10% not to exceed, and I'm comfortable with that approach.
Okay, great. Well, if you guys can send some ideas in of what you think that amount should be, and Steve can get you the other information, and we'll move on from there and bring it back to the next meeting. So thank you. Moving on to Agenda Bill AB 20-93A, Transportation Improvement Board, Puget Sound Energy LED Conversion Project Budget Amendment. Mr. Laniszewski.
Well, hello again, everybody. Steve Laniszewski, Public Works. Thank you for the opportunity to provide this update. So we've been working diligently with PSC. I know Councilmember Iyer has already shared, his insight early on in tonight's meeting, but he has been asking along the way. It has been painful and to work with PSC on this. They're great partners, but this has just been a hard deal. Bottom line is they were over their costs working through TIB. We really are a middleman here. So the TIB, Transportation Improvement Board, manages the grant. We make sure the work gets done here. We pay the bill, and then TIB reimburses us. It's 100% reimbursable. We were discovering that the rates were higher than we expected. So we stopped paying and we started communicating with PSC, and it didn't work out well. So we went straight to TIB. They in turn worked with PSC. They got answers. Bottom line is the cost for the work that was estimated is higher than they thought. So I think we were in the $183,000 range. We're going to be in the $312,000 range. It's budgeted as pass-through revenue. So we receive the grant, we pay the work, technically in reverse order, but it's 100% reimbursed through the TIB. So this is recognizing the increase through the budget, so we can recognize new money in, which will increase, as well as the new money out, which is a wash. It affects the budget none. The work is done, and we just need confirmation to bring this to council so we can have a budget amendment to pay it and not go over our estimated work.
Thank you. And so council knows this is technically the first touch, even though Mr. Laniszewski brought it up, I believe, at the last meeting. If council wants to move this forward tonight, you can suspend your rules. If you want to wait until the next meeting, you can do that. Councilmember Lingle.
I make a motion that we suspend our 3-touch rule.
Second, McHenry.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilmember Lingle, a second by Councilmember McHenry to suspend the 3-touch rule. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And would someone like to make a motion on the agenda bill?
Move that we pass Agenda Bill 2093A.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Iyer, a second by Councilmember Naplin to approve Agenda Bill 20-93A. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And moving on to Agenda Bill 20-94A, Toll Brothers Affordable Housing Discussion. Ms. Thomas.
Good evening, Mayor and Council again. Laura Thomas for the record. Let's see if this works. So let me just go through to the next slide. So this evening, we're going to talk about the affordable housing covenant that's required as part of two different projects and part of pre-annexation agreements and rezone. So I'll go through a little bit of the history. I did attach quite a few documents in the packet. So if you haven't read them all yet, that's okay. We'll have this come through council again. So I did attach an affordable housing terms letter that came in July of 2018 when we were going through construction documents for Duval Urban Village, which is now known as the Ridge at Big Rock. And then also just before we started the preliminary plat for Walden. As part of the requirements, we do need to look at a covenant that restricts affordable housing. That's the mechanism that we'll be using. All of these homes will be for sale. They're not rentals. I've also attached an affordable housing unit formula. That's a sample that Toll Brothers provided us because they've worked with Arch on other projects. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. We also have a site plan, at least for the affordable housing units at the Ridge at Big Rock. And if you haven't noticed, they're actually under construction and they're getting close to coming to occupancy. So they're going to start working on their sales pretty soon as we get through this process. I also attached the development agreement for the Ridge at Big Rock, which is also known as Duval Urban Village, and then also for the Walden, which was Cam West and the city of Duval at that time. And then I also attached a memorandum of understanding from Arch because we did have early conversations with Arch. So we'll talk a little bit about that. In the meeting, we also have Aaron Hollenberry. He is available to, if we have questions or need some assistance from him as well. And then we also have our city attorney, Mr. Kinney. He also assisted in the review of the documents of the covenant. So let's talk about what the requirements are. So the Ridge at Big Rock, we required the city, which was the Planning Commission and Council, and it was a condition of the rezone that affordable housing had to be part of their project. And it was rezoned from commercial to mixed use, which was essentially the mixed use 12 zone. The development agreement required that they have 5% of their affordable housing units at 100% of the King County median income, and that's in the development agreement. And I put the recital number 6 so that you could go directly to the. Sorry, I got a text from Aaron. So you could go directly to that recital and not have to read the 30 pages of the document. That you could go directly to it. As part of that project, it's 5%, so that would be 7 of the units.
And
Then
clerk,
there's,
please let Mr. Hollenberry in the meeting if you can. So he's on as a participant a participant right now.
thank you, Mayor. And he's also on the phone version as well, which is a little bit more challenging. So as part of the Walden project, the affordable housing came as part of the pre-annexation agreement. So as that was going through, the city said, if we're going to annex this land, then we would like to see some affordable housing units. And this one has a total of 10% affordable housing units versus the other one had 5%. So this one will have 25 units. And as you've probably seen, that project is under land development and will final plat next year. So the agreement here is 5% of units at 80% of the King County median income, and then 5% at the 100% of King County median income. Let's talk a little bit about the covenant that restricts the affordable housing units. So this was prepared by both parties. And so Toll Brothers took I'll call it the first stab at the covenant. And then Daniel and I reviewed it. They did do the term at 35 years, which we actually worked with them to do early on a couple of years ago when they were going through the Duval Urban Village, which is now Big Rock. And it was in the development agreement, it states 20 years, but they have offered a 35-year term. They did provide, I'm assuming you've reviewed at least the form that's for the ARCH model for the housing affordability. So that would be something that we would see every time a unit comes in for sale or for resale. The city did engage ARCH several months ago. This took a little bit longer than I think I anticipated or that Toll Brothers anticipated to look and see what opportunities that we may have, whether it was for membership or partnership. So they have 2 ways that you can be a partner with them. And one of them is through their membership. While technically we are in their sphere of influence, they're currently not taking on any new memberships. And a membership provides you with affordable housing coverage under your GMA requirement for affordable housing units. So you have some cities, whether it's like a Mercer Island or a Yarrow Point, that will join this or other organizations so that they can have coverage if they can't put affordable housing units, and they're paying into ARCH, and then ARCH is managing other units for them on their behalf. The other mechanism that they have is to do a memorandum of understanding. And so they did provide us an MOU because that was really the only thing they felt that they could comfortably provide us at this time. And I looked at it, and I'm not recommending, at least at this time, that we engage in that because it does cost money every year. And we'd like to try, at least at this time, to manage these units on our own. The time that we'd have to manage them is when they're going through transition through sale. I think that if the city adds more units, especially if they're rentals, then we'll definitely need to enter into an agreement with some sort of, whether it's a nonprofit or an agency or somebody like ARCH, because we wouldn't be able to manage that internally. And I can have ARCH come and provide a presentation at some point if council is interested. They've offered, obviously, to do that. So now let's talk a little bit about the covenant that's in your document. It's a pretty standard covenant, and so it has different sections. So there's the eligibility requirements, the city's right of first refusal, the procedure of purchase, resale, and finance, the limitation of purchase price, the restriction on the disposition, the termination of right of refusal of the covenant, and then subordination. And then kind of in conclusion, essentially what we'll be looking at a future council meeting is for the city to approve the covenant. The development agreement for Walden requires the parties to agree to a mutually acceptable system for assuring the units are sold or rented as affordable units for at least 20 years. So that's one of the reasons why we're bringing this covenant forward, because it said that we were mutually going to work on it and agree upon it. I'll go ahead and unshare my screen so that I can take any questions. And like I said, we also have Aaron here if you have any questions, or if you have any legal questions too, we have Daniel here.
Councilmember Napland.
So it looks like Arch would charge if they wanted, as you said, to help us manage this. How would that interact with what Councilmember Iyer was saying about potentially getting some sales tax, affordable housing? You know, I know we've been a little bit worried about that, because if we bring it in, then we have to manage something. Is that kind of revenue something we could use to pay to help manage our existing stock, or does it just have to be used to develop new units? I guess maybe that's a question for later.
It's a really good question. And so I will need to look into that. I don't know if we could use it for the management of units. So I'd have to look into that.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Councilmember Brodnicki.
So I'm just curious, the King County affordable housing idea of medium income, is that like 67,000 or
Oh, no.
What is that number?
I believe I put it, it's in your packet on the form. I don't have it in front of me, but it's in your packet. It is
70?
No, it's
And
way over that.
so is that what they use as a base to figure out what the price of the houses will be?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's based on the number of bedrooms too. So if you look at that form, that's the Arch model, it's based on like 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom. So it's not even necessarily like the average medium. It's like a formula that is done that includes that, but then also looks at the number of bedrooms to get a purchase price.
Thank you.
Right. Anyone else have any questions or feedback? Seeing none, Ms. Thomas, Councilmember Hoag and then Councilmember Iyer.
I definitely would like to see Arch come and give a presentation at some point. You know, there's a lot to know about that program. I've sold Arch homes before, and how it works. But typically they also give a homeowner a percentage that if they go to resell it, they can't sell it for more than around 4% appreciation a year or somewhere along those lines. So it's just an interesting.
Yeah, so if you look at
sorry.
If you look at the covenant, there's the details in there on what the resale price would be. So all of that's detailed in the covenant. And then, but we can definitely have them, you know, come and give a presentation. It's honestly, it's been very difficult to coordinate with them. Every time I send them an email, it can be weeks before they communicate back with me. And so I couldn't really wait any longer to try and move this forward because those units are going to be coming to market pretty soon. But we can definitely bring them in because we can ultimately decide in the end if we want to bring them into an MOU and pay them for their service. We could, and then I'll also look at the documentation. So I'll need that email that Councilmember, I forgot which Councilmember was it, Councilmember Iyer, the news article, and then the SCA information so that I can try and start to track that down.
I'll forward it to you, Lauren.
Thank you.
Councilmember Iyer?
Yeah, in terms of the in terms of the article, I was just reading the newspaper, and I'm by no means an expert as to what's going on. And
That's okay. We're not experts in this room in general right now. This is our first rodeo.
yeah, and I think this is. I mean, it's really interesting because the city wouldn't own units off the bat, but have that right of refusal, which is. I mean, am I reading that wrong? Like,
no, that's correct. We have the first right of refusal. So if we wanted to buy them, we could.
That's a very crazy concept. And, I think it's this conversation, folks drop in, they're like, wait, what is that? Managed units, our units. And I think that would hopefully if those rights of refusal comes around, we have a process like internally, how do we say, no, thanks. I mean, that would be my thought, but thank you for bringing this forward. It does serve an important purpose to try to create some affordable housing, but definitely the right of refusal scares me that we could own units at some point.
Right. So can you see I'm showing this 100% affordability level form?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Councilmember Brunicki, this kind of helps you. So you see how there's a family size and then there's a median income. So this is what this would be for 2020.
Could you zoom in on that, please?
I don't think I can right now because I'm sharing it already.
I can see it.
Okay.
Which is interesting because certainly it's high. The price of housing is very inflationary here because I do recall what our income was and when we bought our house, and there's a huge difference in the income versus and the studio. That's is that affordable?
So these aren't low income, they're more affordable. So, like where you have a teacher or two teachers in a household, or you potentially have, one of your city workers that's married and lives in city limits, probably could be potentially eligible.
Councilmember Lingle?
The primary problem with homeownership transfers over a course of time, I mean, it's similar to what we see with our general fund. The cost of housing will outpace the income in the marketplace to purchase the unit. And even with repressed values, that's what has occurred over the last 20 some years. What is intriguing right now is we have unprecedented, low interest rates. And so that's a bit of a game changer, but that won't necessarily happen over a 35-year period. So I'll take a look at the covenant, and I guess I have some comments. One thing I did notice about the MOU is if we do an MOU with Arch, I think we have to add some more specific information that ties back to the development agreement. So it's really clear how those things all link. And so that would be one thing I think I'll be looking at. And then the other thing is if Arch were to partner with another program that is in this business in a larger way, there may be an opportunity there for the city to assign its ongoing supervision of the affordability to that entity, because they would be potentially, I mean, it would be part of their portfolio. So they wouldn't have the kind of costs that that the city would experience if they were operating on their own. And there are a couple other programs that do that.
Yeah, I pulled up really quick. This is the MOU, and it felt like, and I had Aaron on the meetings with me, that it took him a really long time to like even decide if they wanted to even participate in MOU. And I honestly pushed pretty hard. And then they gave me the MOU and said, well, our board's meeting next week, so you have to give us an answer right now. And I was just like, wow, this is like a city. Like, we have to go through a process before we can do that. I agree that we would have to definitely amend this MOU. It's super basic, and I didn't even have Daniel review it because we didn't get it until really late. And I just didn't even know if it was really an option and what we'd actually get out of it based on what their fee schedule was and what they would do, because we're doing a lot of that. We're already doing the majority of this legwork that they would offer services on. So this was the service they wanted to provide, and not really anything else.
Councilmember Lingle.
Did you even contact Homesite?
No.
Well, I mean, I haven't been affiliated with them for many years, but they're the largest community development financial institution that does this type of housing in the state.
Mm-hmm.
And they offset. I mean, the advantage of this is that there's a backup financing mechanism to keep the units affordable if the housing price outpaces, you know, people's incomes. They do work with Arch on other deals. I know that they can do that, but it might be another partner for you to talk to. And they're taking over land trusts, and they're working with cities all over the place in all different types of markets. But because they are a CDFI, they have federal funds to lend, and they're a conduit lender with lots of different banks. So they might be an alternative to Arch if Arch is kind of stuck on the way they want to do it.
I'm gonna try and push a little more. I wanted to see what the conversation was this evening, to see if there was even a temperature to have Arch come and give a presentation. And so I will see if I can get them scheduled. I'm not sure that I'll, just based on because we're working on budget and we have a lot of other policies coming back forward, it might be like December that I would get them scheduled. And then depending on what our conversation is with them, I could also look at Homesite as well. But I won't have time for us to pause in doing this covenant, because we have the units that are going to be coming online.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas.
Thank you.
Any other questions about this? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to Agenda Bill 20-95A, ordinance regarding curfew powers. And this is a real quick introduction. The chief and I had a conversation with Mr. Kenny last week regarding curfews as far as emergency management plans and what have you. And it was agreed that we need to bring the ordinance that sunsetted back. But Mr. Kenny has some suggestions for actually some really good changes to the ordinance that as it was originally proposed. And so we hope to bring that forward. That would be the item of business at the next special meeting after we meet on the 27th. Chief Hurt, did you want to add anything based on your Public Safety Committee meeting this morning?
Thank you, Mayor, Council, members of the audience, staff. Not a whole lot. No, we did meet as a Public Safety Committee today, and I expressed to them that I have had meetings with the chiefs in the coalition cities. At this point, we don't have any viable threats or concerns. Following our meeting, the mayor's and I's meeting with our city attorney last week, we did reach out and have a conversation with the elections director, Jenny Wise.
Julie.
Kind of got a rundown of what their plan is for, at least for election night. And they will have security at every ballot box. I think probably starting around 4:30, and they will be there until they close or close out for the evening. We're fortunate, obviously, that our ballot box is in the police department parking lot. But, you know, police will certainly be in constant contact with the security personnel there. They will be unarmed security. So we will certainly be in constant contact with them. One of the bigger concerns that I had and we talked about was it's probably going to be a pretty high turnout, a lot of traffic on election night. So we are making modifications as a police department to probably, and Jody, you should know this, I guess. We're going to block off parking spots behind City Hall to park our on-duty police cars. So at least we know that our staff can get in and out when they need to. Just simple modifications like that. I appreciate the conversation. City attorney had a lot of great ideas. And I think moving forward long-term, at least from the conversation we had, this needs to be something that is, you know, adopted by ordinance into code. It needs to correspond with our emergency management plan and those things, instead of just trying to piecemeal it every time there's a specific event. It needs to be something that is a tool that is available, whether it's a natural disaster or whatever it is. And we need to be able to keep our community safe. I don't know what else. I am meeting with the East Side Chiefs Association on Monday. We are going to start coordinating and efforts and identifying resources and those types of things if something was to happen. If I can share my screen real quick, I do want to make you aware of something this weekend, but I want to caution the conversation that we are certainly supportive of First Amendment rights. And this is happening in Duval. I don't have a lot of information. I certainly will have more tomorrow. I received this late this evening, just before the meeting, actually. So there will be a parade in Duval from 3 to 4. I don't know. I assume the route would be down Main Street. I don't know. I don't know a lot about it, but I will tomorrow. Again, this occurred in Redmond and Kirkland last weekend. They had about 30 cars and no incidents.
Yeah, I'm not so worried about the, you know, to be clear, I'm not so worried about the people with First Amendments. I'm worried if something happens and our officers have to respond to violence downtown. And the whole point of a curfew would be to get the law-abiding folks to stay home, so that the police department or other agencies could deal with whatever's going on downtown, whether that goes from an earthquake, a fire, you know, social unrest, what have you. And I think one of the things that, you know, I know that's already being talked about at the emergency management level is what happens if there is civil unrest. And if you watch the national news, the FBI is expecting civil unrest in multiple areas. We don't expect it here, but we have to be prepared just in case. It's our job. So unless there are objections, we're just we'll make work with Daniel to make the changes. Most of his clients have already had these ordinances in place a long time ago. I know during last spring, we had some with the Seattle protests and what was happening in other larger cities. A lot of cities passed things really quickly. Ours was temporary. And, and if somebody has any deep objections, I don't expect you to talk to me about that tonight, but I do expect you to contact Chief and I and schedule a meeting so we can discuss those concerns. And then as soon as we have an updated draft ordinance, we'll send it out to council. Councilmember Lingle?
I guess I have a question, which is, are you planning to bring us a permanent ordinance or another interim ordinance?
It was suggested that it be a permanent code ordinance like the original one that was proposed.
So that means you are planning to have a permanent ordinance and there would be no public hearing. Is that correct? Or am I misunderstanding?
That would have to be the case. We had plenty of opportunity over the summer. And we're now in a situation where our law enforcement is left without tools again. So Mr. Kenny can respond as well.
Yeah, I'll just quickly chime in. The structure that I've seen with my clients is similar to, though a little bit different than what you had in place for a short period of time over the summer, is something that would give a tool in a limited number of circumstances to the mayor that then it would then have to come to council at the most immediate juncture thereafter. So there's both the touch to get it into code as just a structure, and then the mayor's touch, and then the council's touch. And then, of course, it would be structured for emergencies of a wide variety. In our conversation, we talked about, you can have a flood, you can have a pandemic, and you could have riots, and you can have forest fires all in one year, like, most of our communities have had. And this could possibly be applicable in some way to all those different types of things. So, I think taking it not in context of election night, but in context of the emergency management and preparedness of the city.
Councilmember Napland?
So just kind of reflecting on why we rejected the ordinance form last time, it's because there was not enough time for public input or public awareness that it was even happening. So, I mean, here we're being put in the same situation again, and I would not be supportive of a permanent ordinance giving powers that can be invoked unless the public was aware that, we were, changing our code, that could happen. And so if we want to do this again, I would really prefer, for my personal opinion, is that, we would get it in the packet. It would be a public hearing, and, people would know about it. I mean, the last time, the reason it was rejected, my recollection is I think we got a copy of it maybe just right before the meeting or shortly there. And so I just don't remember any ability for the public to even know we were changing law, which an ordinance is law. So that's just my feedback. I think a lot of the resistance was just that there was not a lot of preparation or awareness in the public, or even enough time for council to contemplate it.
Yeah, I completely understand those concerns. And to be clear, many cities were in the same position, and most cities put it into code at first touch. Because I think a lot of people recognize that we are in a very unusual situation. There is a lot of unrest in the community. And when you have governors with kidnapping and bomb plots against them, things have changed, and they're not the same as they were a year ago. So, a lot of other cities in our region did pass those ordinances without a sunset, without a temporary. And, the chief has said he needs something, there needs to be a tool. And if something happens and we don't have that tool, there's nothing that the city can do other than enforce.
My feedback would be, the resistance was that we wanted more time to review it. And so as you said, we've had all summer for it to come back to have more time. And here we are at the last minute before an emergency getting it again. And so I don't know if that was something where council members supposed to try to finalize this and bring it to council, or
it was
confused why it's somehow council should have.
It was council's response. Council said that they wanted more time to look at it. Council did not get back to us in that time period. We've had citizen contacts about interactions that they've had within the community that are worrisome to them as well. And we've had people reaching out to us asking what the city's plan is.
Mhm.
There is no plan because we don't have an ordinance.
Okay, my preference is still to have it in enough time that we can have a public hearing.
All right, Councilmember Iyer.
I would say that I would echo the concerns of other council members, and those are which I expressed the last time this came around. And I would say the plan would be to arrest people who are breaking existing laws. And I don't mean that flippantly, but as I indicated in the last council meeting we discussed this, I take these limitations of rights and movements very seriously. And I also think that the context of this situation is important, and that as we saw in the last events where this came up, and I think the reactionary nature of this is not, I don't want to be disrespectful, but I don't I don't fear my fellow citizens at this time, or residents. And I have spoken to one resident from the community, and while I appreciate their opinions, that I don't agree that we need to prepare for Armageddon. And
that's inflammatory, Councilmember Iyer. We're talking about the most extreme events. We're not talking about people waving signs or this, and there is no reactionary to this when this is considered something that is in most emergency management plans already. There's nothing reactionary about this at this point.
Can I finish?
Yes, you may.
So to that point, I think this is just as it came about the last time. It was a response to protest. It was not a general, thing that we had changed, and it's coming about this time because of the election.
It's not because of the election. It's because of everything going on in the country, Councilmember Iyer.
Okay, are we going to do a point by point?
I've made that clear, and I would appreciate sticking to the facts.
Well, and then it would seem that it wouldn't matter if we, if we went through the normal process that we would go through for an ordinance of this type, where we, have it in the packet. And I think the fact that it's in the packet as a single line item with no detail is a testament to, what's what are people supposed to
Councilmember Iyer, this literally was decided on Thursday through a conversation with our city attorney. And that ordinance is being updated. It would have made no difference to include an ordinance that had already been introduced in public that was being amended to include it in this packet. This is for discussion to bring forward at the next meeting. No one's asking anyone to make a decision this evening. I think Councilmember McHenry had her hand up.
I'm not done speaking. I've not yielded the floor. I would like to have a point of order on the floor that I am still speaking. And I think the chair should recognize my point that I am still speaking and put the point of order to a vote as it should be done. And
I'll recognize your right to speak, Councilmember Iyer.
Okay, thank you. Much appreciated. Now, I think the productivity of having something on the packet, if it's not ready by Friday, it shouldn't be in the packet. And I do not support doing this now. And I think we should go through the process. That's simply what I'm trying to say. Thank you. I yield the floor.
Councilmember McHenry.
So I'll restate something I said in committee today, which was that I would support something temporary. But again, we're hearing the same arguments that we did last time, the same concerns. I think people want time to involve the public. There could always be a next emergency, and we recognize that. But if we allow something temporary, then we need to, get going on this. Obviously, it would be a useful tool to have. But I don't think anyone's opinions as of tonight are going to change from when this last came forward. And I think we should keep it productive and keep moving forward and accept what our fellow council members are saying and get some sort of consensus on a compromise like we did last time.
Councilmember Brodnicki.
So as a person of color, I'm just going to say that I have a plan, and it doesn't involve the police. And I've already initiated it for myself, because I will tell you, in the last few weeks, it has gotten a little crazy for people like me to walk the streets of Duval. And I think the biggest question I have is for the person who asked, and I have the same question. If you're hoping that the city's going to do something, I'm not hoping. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stay in my home. I'm going to prepare things, and I'm going to pretty much be in more quarantine and lockdown than before. And until I feel like the anger and the tension subsides, I won't put myself out there because somebody's angry because I exist on this planet. But not everyone can do that or understands to do that. And I think I am considering the thought of should we offer, at least to the citizens out there who might be wondering, should they call, or will there be support for them the week after if things go a little off kilter? I think that's a soft message to the community, but one where people feel like they're safe. We're not going to tell them to hide in their houses, which is essentially what I'm doing. But we should recognize that there is activity happening in this town. Maybe not to all of you, but I can tell you, it's really hard to go walk my dog now. And this is just in the last few weeks. So I don't know if there's a lot of people out here that have this problem. Probably our demographics say no, but for those who don't feel safe, do we have any sort of plan, soft plan? We're not talking about changing law or something, but just so I could have answered that lady who emailed me, I had no answer. I don't know, what do we do about that? We're discussing it. And I think it's okay to discuss it and to come up with something to tell people out there that if things go a little awry, or there's a small group that's causing some tension, don't worry, because you can call this number, or we'll be available. There will be more people on staff for the week after, something.
Chief Hurt, did you want to respond?
Sure. I think really, quite honestly, the message is getting lost here. Again, the tool for a curfew is not so the city can tell people to stay home, or you're going to be arrested for violating curfew. The reality is, and I guess what you guys are asking me is to publicly announce our vulnerability as a police department, and so I will. The process of a curfew, in my opinion, and in my police staff's opinion, is a safety measure for those that aren't involved in public or civil unrest. So we have a notification system, and it needs to be expressed to the community somehow that if the city is calling for a curfew, something bad is happening. We're recommending you stay home. That is how the police department is viewing us.
Yep.
And I think that message is it's getting lost, guys. It really is.
Yep. And that's, and frankly, that's what Carrie and I've talked a lot about. I trust Carrie's opinion. I trust command staff's opinion, and I trust our city attorney's opinion. Councilmember Langle.
Well, that's all fine. I trust our police department completely. And I'm a strong believer in community policing, and that's a lot of the reason why our police department is as good as they are. I think we have to keep this distinction, though, that we do need an ordinance that addresses emergency circumstances. The issue now is whether or not we can have an interim ordinance to address the immediate issues. There's some things that we can put in that ordinance that might, give further reassurance. I've been in enough situations that are very dangerous that I feel very safe in Duval. Now, I know everybody else doesn't, and I understand why. So, but I think that's the distinction here, is that we can put something in place that, again, and maybe it's even a little different than what we had before, that put something in place to deal with this current dynamic. And then we can really deliberate a permanent ordinance that intersects with an emergency management plan. And it can even go before the emergency management plan, but we should have an opportunity to really think through how emergencies are declared. And as soon as I can see something, I mean, it sounds like there's some examples, ship them out. I'd love to take a look at them, but I don't have anything to react to now. And that's very, very uncomfortable for me. I think we should have something to look at before we're asked to, to make decisions like this.
And point well taken, and I understand. If you for those feeling uncomfortable, put yourself in, I ask you to put yourselves in my shoes and Chief's shoes of how uncomfortable it is even just to have this discussion, let alone, the possibilities of things that could happen in this country over the next several months. It's not a comfortable situation for anyone. It seems unreal. But what's going on and the unrest around the country and the threats against people, the violence against people is very real. And so it sounds like council does not want to take up this ordinance next week. So we'll just bring it back again and move forward from there. There's clearly not consensus. I would caution against doing something temporary that's less than 6 months, just like when we discussed it last summer, because we don't know what's coming forth, nor do we know how long it's going to take to get the comprehensive emergency management plan done. And make sure that we don't end up in this position again. Councilmember McHenry.
So I'm sorry, just for clarification, are you saying we cannot pass something temporary again like we did before? Did I miss what that was?
What I'm saying is, yes, you can, but I'm also recommending that it be for at least 6 months, because we don't want to be in this position again in 3 or 4 months if there is something comes up and a credible threat and we don't have anything in place and have to have an emergency meeting and then show the city's public safety hand. So we can do that, but I also need to make sure that folks recognize that it needs to be a longer term for temporary until we have time to get a final ordinance and the comprehensive emergency management plan in place. And if that means that council wants to make it permanent in a month, that's fine. But we can't, I don't think it's right for us to have to come back again and again and again every time something happens in the country, or anytime things start to heat up. And having these discussions in public is difficult enough when you're dealing with law enforcement, and I would prefer that we have as few of them as possible, because by having continued conversations, you're also inviting trouble. Councilmember McHenry.
Well, I guess just to follow up, I didn't realize the ball was in our court to bring something back to ourselves to pass it forward. I thought the edits would be made and that a public process would be followed, or you know what I mean, like having a public hearing and stuff. So knowing that now, though, what I'm proposing, I suppose, what I'm asking is if you can bring back something temporary in nature, like we did last time, and with an understanding that council does want to move forward and look at this more in depth and get it on the schedule. And I would like to know if my fellow council members agree with that line of thinking.
Councilmember Langle's thumbs up. Councilmember Hoag.
I agree, Councilmember McHenry. I think it's best to not do something permanent during a time when we're feeling such pressure. I think that we need to be, I think we have to put some thought into it. It can't just be reactionary. And I really respect all of you, and it breaks my heart that we have to discuss this. And I feel for Councilmember Brindicki completely. And but I just think that we need to, I think that it is something we need to bring forward as a permanent thing, but not rush it.
Right. Any other council members want to speak to that? Councilmember Remington? And then I think Chief Hurt may have something to say. It looks like you might.
Mayor, thank you. These are important issues. I also want to recognize Diane for sharing so personally. I think you represent other folks in the community. Our police recognize that some of our citizens have similar experiences. This is an unprecedented time. I know in my long life, to watch this kind of unrest across the country, right across the lake in Seattle, it's disturbing to say the least. Regarding the ordinance, I think I was on that camp that just thought it would be coming back. We'd have a little bit more time to discuss it. There'd be a little bit more process. So I apologize. There's a misunderstanding there. It does feel a little bit rushed. I would support something short-term until we can have that longer discussion. I will tell council there are tools in any emergency. There's often things that are just unknown and you can't plan for everything. And so part of the emergency management process, city council has a role. It's not in the operations, not in the police or public works, whatever it might be, but our role is policy and approving additional finance that might be available. I've sat many times with large emergencies that were not expected, where we, called council together. I was a deputy chief overseeing Bellevue's Emergency Operations Center. And I'm just using this as an example for us to help understand the process. But councils are often asked to get together on an emergency basis. In our case, now it would be a Zoom, to be able to say, is there a special policy that needs to be put in place? That might be additional police officers that you're putting on duty, or overtime that's approved, additional money to purchase things that you don't have that you need. And so that's just a process. Now, it's better, and I fully support having a ordinance in place. And I think our city attorney, Mr. Kinney, would really help us in looking at other ordinances. I think I had passed out to council several that other cities used. I certainly included City of Bellevue, which I was familiar with. I like their process. As Mr. Kinney said, the mayor, or Bellevue's case, city manager, has that flexibility in an emergency to work with our case, the police chief, to say, is this necessary? And then institute what we need to give police additional tools. But then it comes back to city council. I believe it's within 24 hours. So that, after that, whatever's been put in place cannot continue until it's approved by city council. So it gives the mayor, that flexibility to work and be a little bit more nimble. So, I'm not trying to confuse this, but to break it down, I think if we want something temporary now, we can certainly do it. We certainly, what I hear from everybody, we don't mind having something long-term, but we want to have a good discussion. I've heard folks say we want a public process so that public can give feedback as well. So, and I heard from the chief today, we don't want to divulge, weaknesses we might have. So I think we have to be very careful there. The chief made it clear the police department will respond to problems, so this isn't about doing something to prevent bad people from doing things. It really is a way to notify the public, but we do have a PIO. We do have a way to notify public, whether it's the discussion board or other things, that we're putting a curfew in place. Please stay out of whatever area it might be. So it allows police to deal with the bad folks and not try to figure out, or have to deal with the rest of us that might not be smart enough to just stay home. So I don't know, I agree with Councilmember Iyer a bit. I don't feel like, generally when bad things happen, people that want to get the publicity or make a point do it where they get the publicity, and it's probably not Duval. Having said that, I'm not foolish enough to think that any town, as the mayor says, we ought to be prepared. I don't think this is one of those where we have our pants down, we're going to get ourselves in trouble. I think we have tools available to make the decisions we need at the time, if necessary. Most of us, I think, will be available that night. I think the bigger issue, from what I hear, probably isn't just that night, but it's the day or two afterwards. So I'll quit talking. I just wanted to say, that these are tough issues. It's a tough time. I understand why this is frustrating for everybody, but I am absolutely confident we can work together in a long-term plan. I think Mr. Kinney put something together for us that is a great platform for us to start with. We can talk through, there's just probably a handful of concerns that we'd actually have in an ordinance, and we can talk through those and work with the mayor and staff, the police chief, to come up with something we all can agree with. So Mayor, yes, I would support something short-term if you want to. My intent was not to say let's always do short-term stuff, but it would get us over that hump if you feel it's necessary. Again, I think we need to bring back that example of an ordinance that we can work on, but allow a public process and opportunity for a good discussion on it so we can have it permanent in place, and then we can move on. So, I appreciate all the, some of these things are difficult to work with. And yet I'm absolutely confident that, as our citizens representatives, that we're going to come up with the right answer here. The bigger question is what to do in the short term. And I can't speak, I don't have probably all the information the chief might have or the mayor might have. Different people I have spoke with have different levels of concern. I do know that there is chatter online that's being looked at by the FBI and Homeland Security. I won't go into any detail, but there are some concerns, and you're likely going to see something across the United States that makes you just wonder what happened to us. Will that happen in Duval? I don't have a clue. I do know that if there is something that were to happen and the chief doesn't have the tools and the mayor doesn't have the authority, they can get a hold of us in an emergency, and we can make whatever policy decisions, financial decisions that are necessary. But I think the point the mayor's making, it'd sure be nice to have those in place now. We don't have them in place now. If there's a short-term thing, Mayor, I'd suggest that you can live with, bring it forward. We'll take a look at it at the next meeting. We can certainly say, let's put this in place for, the week of the election. And then we can bring back something permanent. That would be my suggestion. I think it meets both needs. And then with Mr. Kinney's help, I think we can take a look at that long-term, the options, and put something in place. So
thank you. Chief Hurt, and then, Chief, do you want Councilmember Rudnicki to go first, or would you like to go first? You're on mute.
Sorry, I'd actually like to go first because one of the things I wanted to do was address what Councilmember Rudnicki had said. But first, well said, Mayor Pro Tem, well said. And when you were speaking about the emergency management plan, yeah, I've been in a lot of emergencies too. Fortunately, most were outside of the city of Duval in a prior job that I had. But I guess I would encourage you folks, because it's likely I won't be here when the process takes place. when you're developing and reviewing and creating an emergency management plan for your city, I would really encourage you to make sure that there are steps in there, not even steps, requirements for the city, that they train on that plan, constantly train on that plan, whether it's 2 or 3 times a year, whatever it is, mock drills, those types of things. Because I can tell you from experience, if you can have the best plan in the world, you can have all the policies in the world, if you don't train on them and shit hits the fan, sorry, you're gonna revert back to what you know. And if you don't know how that emergency management plan works and you haven't trained on it, you might as well not have one. I'm just being candid with you. To Council Member Bernicki's point, you know, I empathize with you. Council Member Bernicki and I have had these conversations for beyond a year. And what she's telling you guys is absolutely real. It's absolutely real and do well.
Mhm.
Whether any of you have ever experienced it or want to believe it, it's here and it's real. So I empathize. I absolutely empathize with you, Diane. Thank you.
Thank you. And just real quick before Councilmember Brodnicki goes, we do need to take a vote to extend the meeting. So all those in favor of extending the meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Councilmember Brodnicki.
So I just wanted to say that Mike, Councilmember Remington, that was good points. And that's sort of what I was looking for, that I could not articulate, but thank you for articulating that. And thank you for everyone, sorry, for your input. I really appreciate it. That's all.
Thank you, Councilmember. And I have to say, it's not just Councilmember Nikki. I have friends that have been experiencing this in our community and surrounding communities, to the point where I have friends that are doing much the same as Councilmember Nikki. It's serious and it's real. So with that, we did one item that we did forget to discuss at the beginning of the meeting is discussion of the November 3rd meeting. My recommendation would be to move this to either Monday, Wednesday, or Thursday of that week. I think based on our timing and based on what is going on, this is one of the most important nights in our country's history. And I know that there's a lot of people, first of all, I don't think the public's going to be paying attention to our council meeting that evening. You know, part of our point is to do our business in public for the public. So I know that Mayor Pro Tem Remington has put out some options to you guys, but my recommendation would be to either move the council meeting to Monday, Wednesday, or Thursday, and not meet at all on that Tuesday, for the sake of making sure that us as individuals can exercise our constitutional rights, as well as potentially be with our families, especially for those feeling fear that evening. And there will be a lot of it, regardless of the outcome. Councilmember Lingle.
I agree with moving the meeting. And for me, it's kind of a toss-up. Fear before the election, fear after the election. I'm hoping that the fear before the election will be the lesser of the two fears. So, but I think you're right. I think we should not have the meeting on election day. And so thank you for that recommendation.
Councilmember Iyer.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I would ask that we do it on Thursday. My wife works Monday, Wednesday, so that's not a good day for me.
Great, thank you. Councilmember McHenry.
Yeah, I also agree. I was thinking about this and I don't think it's a good idea. I want people to be able to focus on getting out and voting. So after the election would be preferable, Wednesday or Thursday. I'm fine with Thursday if that works for everyone else.
All right. Councilmember Napland.
I'm free any night, so if Thursday works the best for the person with the most scheduling issues, I'm good with that.
All right. Councilmember Hoag.
Thursday works for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Remington,
Thursday.
Councilmember Brodnicki.
Thursday's good.
Okay, Councilmember Iyer, you had another comment?
I could always do Saturday too, because I never have any plans.
Not happening on Saturday for our staff. All right, so it sounds like we do have consensus to move the November 3rd meeting to November 5th. And Chief Clerk Wyckoff?
I just want to confirm, this is going to be a full cow and council?
Yes.
Is that what we're all, okay. Just wanna make sure.
And moving the meeting versus canceling it will also allow council to stay more on track with their budget discussions as well, which is good. So, all right, with that, we have no further business. Oh.
You skipped one.
Yeah, clear, that was just.
Oh, you're right. Oh my goodness, I apologize. I flipped the page and marked the wrong one off. We actually do have one more item of unfinished business. I'm so sorry. Agenda Bill 20-84B, Resolution Clear Grading Permit Fee Update. Mr. Laniszewski.
I lost my page now, sorry. Good evening, everyone. Steve Laniszewski, Public Works. Okie dokie, back to clear and grading permit fee. So, after the last meeting, which I thought was another good conversation relative to this specific topic, somebody provided me a wonderful spreadsheet that I utilized and plagiarized and put right in the packet. So with that said, the fee table that was recreated skips through in a nice orderly fashion. And I'm gonna flip to screen here. Wait, I'm gonna push my button. Too many windows open. Okay, so there's existing grading fee the city of Duval currently administers. This is the one presented originally in the packet that had kind of a skip around rate on a fixed cubic yardage, and we were going in 10 or 100,000 cubic yard chunks. And then it had in between numbers that stacked up in kind of a funny fashion, bringing that forward and massaging some of those numbers to come in line with what I thought was reasonable relative to the discussion we had is the far right column. So those numbers are provided in the math, again, concisely summarized for me in the spreadsheet here, correlating to a new fee table. I'm sorry if that makes people a little car sick. If you went to the table, the numbers in red were edited to, again, stack and work as you go. Just a little more. And things are relative to fees in a fee table that if they're not, comprehensive enough within the document itself. So there's no making up things. Legal counsel recommended, which we had added previously too. And there's a typo in there, darn it. Fees listed do go up by the resolution that increases fees per the indices that are applicable. And that is the summary of the document provided in the packet. Are there any specific questions moving forward? I think the fee, back up to the little table of assessment. Your use there is provided. And staff's comfortable moving forward. I'm not sure if council is. At the last meeting, we did talk about having a hearing, so we would present this at a hearing, and I would imagine at a regular meeting coming forward, not like a special off Tuesday. No immediate hurry, but just kind of regular business in conjunction with all of the budget talk. Questions?
Councilmember Lingle, and then Councilmember Napoli.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I thought the way you put the changes in was awesome. It was super easy to follow, and I'm ready to go on this. So thanks.
So I guess I'm up. I like the change. I didn't intend to, suggest an actual dollar amount, just kind of a methodology that made sense. But I did have a question for Councilmember Iyer. He had asked about the the fill and the cut and how that got calculated. And I don't know as much about that. And so I really would need to lean on the expertise of you guys. So maybe if someone could explain that, and if Councilmember Iyer has any feedback on if that looks reasonable based on what he knows. I'm curious.
Councilmember Iyer.
Yeah, I mean, I think this to me is reminiscent of the eds, because I see that, any agent, from my experience, my expertise would be just watching people work together, and that sometimes having it memorialized in this is helpful. And then, just like the eds are helpful because they point people in all the right directions. And so I think having the standardized process and having it defined and highlighted and being over with the pointer over and over again,
I was trying to get rid of that funny little note there.
Yeah, so I think that's the biggest thing, is that we know how it's defined, and I think that sounds great to me. Thank you for the work on this. I appreciate it.
Great. Any other feedback from Mr. Laniszewski? Councilmember McHenry.
Just to say, I think it looks great and I'm happy with it.
Okay. It sounds like we've got in general pretty good support of this. This is definitely more than the second touch. So if council would like to vote on it, even though it was listed as discussion, you have that option, or we can move it to the next regular meeting.
Mayor, I think we're going to hold a hearing on that.
Oh, that's right. I apologize. That's right. I forgot we were going to do that on that one. So we will do the public hearing and then you can vote. So with that, is there any further feedback or comments on this? Oh, Chief Hurt.
Sorry, not on this. Go ahead. I just wanted to ask a question when this item was over real quick. Okay. Sorry.
All right. Chief Hurt, you have the floor.
So, I appreciate the concerns of the lack of meeting times available left for budget stuff. So I guess my question to council, and you can shut me down if this is inappropriate, but moving forward for the rest of the year, because I do have a public safety committee, I know there's a finance committee. I do have about half a dozen things I need to get through council this year. So my question is, are we able to use the platform of our committees as a first touch to expedite things, I guess? And I ask that because I'm certainly going to be trying to train both of my lieutenants on this process, and the first step would be at the committee level.
So Chief Hurt, I can answer that partially. So when the rules are created, we only had committee of the whole. Committee of the whole was the first touch. So the rules do not specify that committee is or is not the first touch with the public safety committee. And so ultimately that's a council determination. But right now, as it stands, the rules basically have 3 public touches. But council can change it at any time. Council member or Mayor Pro Tem Remington.
Yeah, Mayor, I agree. I really think the 3 touch were for all council members to be able to ask questions and see what's going on. So Chief, I don't believe we would use the committee as a touch. Having said that, council, as you've watched over the last few months, are readily able to say, let's suspend our rules and move something forward. Or in the case of the contract we had for dispatch services, we can, if something looks like it's pretty straightforward, we can put that on the consent agenda. Many of these things we like to do in public and have a discussion so that citizens can watch that. But if you got things to bring forward, even on our busy schedule, let's talk about it at public safety, and we can certainly, as Mayor Pro Tem, I can work with council members as we did on the dispatch for police services, and where we can try to speed these up, where we feel like we need discussion. It's just part of the process, and I hate to be the cog in the wheel, but that discussion publicly are really important. We're pressed because of budget, but having said that, public process is important, and that discussion, many of these might only need one discussion, and I can't speak for all the council, but council may say we're comfortable we're busy. Let's move it forward tonight. So I think the process we've been using works. And if you're comfortable with that, like I say, don't hesitate, bring those things forward to public safety, and we'll certainly be part of that process to see what we can move forward, in one touch.
I appreciate it. And again, I respect the process. I was just trying to create a solution for expedite, to give you guys more time to do with what you need to do with the budget. That was all. Thank you.
Councilmember Lingle.
Yeah, one of the things that can be difficult is not really knowing what your top priorities are. So we can always focus on those really critical items. Like I noticed in the parking lot, the school district agreement. I mean, unless that agreement has been substantially changed, it should move, boom, boom. It should be able to move pretty fast. And you've already told us a little bit about what you were doing there in previous meetings. So prioritization helps a lot. And then with the committees, council previously, like finance and administration, for example, we have been reluctant to make recommendations that might move something further along. So that's something I think the committee can think about, using that more frequently to move things.
No, I appreciate it. You're going to see that parking lot, my items on the parking lot go through pretty quick, I think. And most of those have already gone through the Public Safety Committee, probably twice.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem Remington.
Thank you. As an example of what the chief's talking about, the last few meetings we've had with public safety, we've talked about the SRO, the part-time SRO, the DARE program. We've talked about cameras for officers, which is ongoing process. So these are things we've discussed. We've met today virtually with a vendor to talk about the cameras, to understand how they work. How do you keep the digital information? How much time for officers does it take? So there's been a lot of really good discussion, and it may just be a one touch where we can share that with council and move it forward. But I just wanted to give you an example of what we're looking at and talking about with public safety. Thank you, Chief.
Councilmember McHenry.
Yeah, those are great points. I think in our past experience now as we've been starting up committees, is often doing the work in committee does make it go through council a little quicker. So I think we could definitely keep bringing your stuff forward and fit that in with budget. Yeah, we're busy and it's tight. That being said, I think this is a great thing to talk about at our next retreat. If we have one in January or the beginning of next year, that we could talk about how are the committees going and are we going to change that process and just readdress those rules.
Thank you. All right, anything else for the good of the order? Seeing none, and now officially having no further business, we are adjourned unless there are objections. All right, have a good night all.